Look, we've been hearing now from lawmakers for days, from both Republicans and Democrats, about how they're very skeptical of that second strike, particularly if those two survivors were incapacitated, or if they really were going to try and continue to fight or pose any threat to the military who are carrying out this operation. They want to know who saw this, who knew this. They also are likely going to press Bradley on what Hegseth had said publicly during that cabinet meeting on Tuesday, that he had only been there for the first part of this strike. We also want to probably get more answers on really how did they reach their conclusions that these two survivors were still a potential threat. So that's going to be a big focus. And again, still watching to see this IG report coming out today on Hegseth and the use of signal. That's going to be a big point of talk for Hegseth today as well. Kato.
And the mood of lawmakers after they receive this classified briefing will be an important thing to gauge today as well. It's great to see you, Elena. Thank you so much for kicking us off. John.
All right, joining us now is CNN senior legal analyst Elliot Honey. Counselor, great to see you. I want to read you the Wall Street Journal reporting on what Admiral Bradley is going to say today. Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley plans to say he and his legal advisor concluded the two survivors were attempting to continue their drug run, making them and the already damaged vessel legitimate targets for another attack, two defendants said. So we're day 5 or 6 into this. This is sort of the defense they appear to have settled on. What's significant about this? How does this change maybe the frame?
Well, I think they're finding a gray area here. So let's consider a couple hypothetical scenarios that I think can help explain the law. If there was a first strike on a ship, and then it turned out there were two people in the water clinging to shards of aluminum from the boat, they would be defenseless. They would be incapacitated, absolutely against every Geneva Convention, Hague Convention, law of war available. It would be a war crime. It would be illegal. That's scenario one. If on the other extreme, there was a strike, but there were still two people on board and they were firing back at American forces or radioing in attacks, physical attacks, artillery strikes on American forces, they would still be in play and that would be legal. Now we've landed, I think, closer to the first scenario, right, but somewhere in that gray area in the middle.
Okay, and again, in order to prove that second scenario, in theory, they'll have to produce video, communications, whatever. That may be what they do today. This all hangs on it being an armed conflict, exactly, which of course is a completely different set of circumstances.
And that takes us out a level to all 21 of these strikes that have happened on these ships. The premise for all of this is essentially we're in a war. Donald Trump has said this is an armed conflict.
This is a bunch of legalese trying to dictate what people can do. These drugs that are happening, going through the channels into the United States, are killing people. I saw a number, it was 80,000 a year. Maybe it's 50,000, but the thing is that there are more people that die per year from these drugs coming from South America. Not necessarily just Venezuela, but from South America, than all of the dead through the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq post 9/11 per year. Per year. Don't you think that this is a war? This is an opium war on us. It's not opium, it's a bunch of other stuff. And we know what happened in the opium wars. The opium wars is what actually weakened China. This is there's many puppet masters in this, all right? One is the black ops for the national security, for the national security state, all right? Primarily the FBI, or primarily the CIA. So you have black ops being funded by this stuff. So that's one part of it. But you actually have an orchestrated effort to weaken the country through what I'll call the Opium Wars 2.0. Actually, there was two opium wars in China, so it's like 3.0. But that's getting into the details of history. But the point here is that there's a forced weakening of our population. So we are not as prowess, especially in an armed conflict against China. Do you think China is not involved in this? Of course they're involved. They want to weaken the United States. They want to cause the same harm to the United States as what Western civilization caused on the Chinese during the Opium Wars. But you got a bunch of legalese here that are saying it's not an armed conflict, but yet it kills 80,000 people. Even if you take the low number of 50,000, it's still a lot of people per year. So are we in a war or not? Was the Opium Wars a war? According to them, no, it's not an armed conflict. It's not an armed conflict. What? This is something that we need to get a handle on. And I have as an American citizen, I don't care if Trump destroys Venezuela. I want that. I don't care if he double taps, triple taps, quadruple taps narco terrorists. I don't care. Oh, that may be a war crime because it's not really a war. It's not an armed conflict, blah, 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 blah. If we don't stop this, our society will be weakened and we will not be as prowess, especially when the real armed conflict happens in the Pacific. Now, if you think that the other faction, so you have the Black Ops faction, you have the ones that want to weaken America geopolitically. So this is Opium Wars 3.0. And you also have the drug smugglers that are making a ton of money on doing this. If there's demand, there'll be supply. And this is the reason why we, as American citizens, need to handle the supply issue by destroying it and destroying that supply chain, and also handling the demand issue. We have too many people that feel as though they need to be medicated because their life sucks or this or that or whatever. But in the reality is because they are this way. I'm not trying to demonize the ones that are the users of the drugs, but the fact is this: by them using this, by them being this way, they're bringing down the society. Now, they're self-centered and they don't care. Life gave them, sour grapes and they're all upset and they have to be on drugs or whatever. And there are many different categories of people that are drug abusers. Some of them are addicted to painkillers because they had surgery or whatever. Some of them, they're going through their early adulthood life and feel as though they want to be cool or whatever. The reality of the situation is these people, no matter what category they're in, make the society weaker, make our society in the United States weaker. Is there virtue? Is there virtue in what they do? No, of course not. Does it add to the productivity of the society? No, it doesn't. And we have a society where it's almost like they want to try to elevate these people, where they have this like rap star lifestyle where you got the hoes and the drugs and the big cars and, the big house. A lot of people just want to be like a P. Diddy. A lot of people want to be like a Snoop Dogg. You really think that they're virtuous? Not even close. Do you think that they actually add to society? No. I don't care how many times Snoop Doggy Dogg is cooking with Martha Stewart, he's still a piece of shit. And he will always be a piece of shit. See, the country needs to focus on the supply and demand. If we don't, we are going to be a weaker country. So if we lose because we don't have Johnny being able to fight, then we need to look in the mirror as a society and say, We have a younger generation that chose not to be virtuous and not to protect the Constitution, not to hold true the three pillars of God, country, and family. Our actions are amalgamated into either a strong nation or a weak nation. So blowing up the fucking terrorists, blowing up the narco-terrorists, you know what? I think it's a great thing. And I am 100% backing Hegseth, even if he triple tap the people. I don't care, because it's a problem. Because they're so smart, they're stupid with this legalese. Because if they try to create a bunch of barriers to stop the opium wars 3.0, then we're going to be a weakened country. Is that what they want? Or they just want to be right? What's the end goal? If the end goal is for us to have a more economic prowess and a more military prowess, especially when we get closer and closer to a very high potential conflict with China, which method is better? The Pete Hegseth method of kill the enemy, or the legalese method where you have a weakened country?
Terrorist organization. Now, we do not have an authorization for use of military force from the Congress, which is the way we now essentially declare war. If Congress declared that, there would be very little legal question, but that's not been declared. We have had international drug importation into this country for centuries, yet no administration, Republican or Democrat, has ever said that is the equivalent of being at war. In fact, if you look at the legal sources, the way we define armed conflict is, first of all, an arm. It's not even clear these people were armed.
First of all, the purification of these substances and the lethality of the substance in small quantities are far greater now than it was a century ago. Secondly, we have eroded for a century God, country, and family. We're in this postmodern era where the architecture sucks, the art sucks, the music sucks. The attention span is like a gnat. It's not even a goldfish, it's a gnat. And the kids can't fight. The kids can't go to war and win.
An armed, organized force that's making a sustained assault on the American homeland. All of those elements, I think, are very fairly in question.
And even if you accept the premise from the administration that this is an armed conflict, even with this new version of events that we're seeing now for the first time, is it clear that trying to deliver the drugs and or calling or communicating with another boat would be a threat?
So really important point. Even if there is a war, even if you have combatants, if they are incapacitated, if they are defenseless, if they are wounded or shipwrecked, that's actually a literal textbook example, you cannot circle back and kill them. So that's number one. Number two, this argument that, well, they're bringing in drugs are dangerous, people use drugs.
According to the report that will be eventually, I guess, reviewed by Congress, they were hit. They climbed back in the boat. They were trying to salvage the drugs, and so the Admiral hit them. And I would say, good going, Admiral. You need another medal. Because that's what we need. We need people that are willing to kill the enemy. Oh, but the drug runners aren't the enemy, DrPaulCottrell. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Because it's called pernicious. Their actions are pernicious. Their actions will lead to a weakened country. Our country. I don't care about a weakened Venezuela. Because if we are weaker, the chances of us winning in the Pacific against China is a lot less. And I guarantee you, the lifestyle you have will radically change if we lose the Pacific. Radically. So you think that you're safe and you can have a nice job and, you know, there's lots of opportunity, even though there are ups and downs in the economy, but we're relatively in good shape compared to other countries. That's going to all change if we lose the Pacific. So ultraliberalism is pernicious. The drug abuse is pernicious. Allowing countries to try to erode our hegemonic power is pernicious.
Times die, that is dangerous. That is a federal crime. That is something we are absolutely entitled to try to stop. However, it lacks the imminence that usually has been required for this type of strike. Usually, if you have this kind of strike, it has to be a bomb's about to go off, someone's about to get shot, there's about to be a physical attack on U.S. forces or people.
Very quickly, Admiral Bradley is talking to Congress today. There is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Do their interests align 100% legally?
No, they could in fact diverge, because the key question to listen for is, what did each individual specifically know at that moment? If Pete Hegseth knew there were 2 survivors and perhaps hypothetically they were unarmed or not dangerous, and he gave an order, he could be in trouble. If he didn't know that though, and only Bradley knew that, then the buck could stop at Bradley. So their interests, they have some commonality, but they're not exactly aligned.
Ellie Hody, Counselor, great to see you today. Obviously,
my prediction is this: Admiral Bradley is going to be okay. He will maintain command and he'll be fine. And Pete Hegseth is going to still kick ass and be the Secretary of War. And that's the way it should be. Because you know what? Like Pete Hegseth said, our military needs to be lethal, not be patty cake. What's wrong with having a lethal force? I mean, what is it with these people? It's like ultraliberalism is taking over the military. What? I mean, we're in an opium war, but it's not opium. It's a bunch of other stuff. Cocaine, fentanyl, whatever. But it's just the reverse. It's the opium wars in reverse. China wants this to weaken us. And it's doing a good job. Do you ever walk around certain areas of New York with that crazy look, that standing frozen look that these people are in? Or in LA? You see it all the time in LA. I saw some of it in Boston. But it's common in New York. It's definitely common in LA. Think that's a society that's going to be able to fight the Chinese? You know what? We have to look in the mirror and say, you know what? There are a lot of pieces of shit in the United States that are citizens. They need to get their act in gear.
A lot of questions here. We could learn more over the course of the day how this is explained and what evidence also they have, which is crucial.
Joining me now in the group chat, Betsy Klein, CNN senior White House reporter, Mike Dubke, former Trump White House communications director, and Ashley Etienne, former communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris. Betsy, I want to start with you. This is coming kind of at a high stakes moment for Hegseth, because then also somehow Signalgate is back. Can you talk about how they plan to approach this?
Well, just setting aside the legality here, this has become a very serious political problem for this White House. As you saw, as these Republican lawmakers are laying out very serious concerns about what took place here, as well as Hegseth's handling of it. So the question is he going to depart, or will the president continue to go to the mat for him? Right now, it appears to be the case that the president is all in on Secretary Hegseth. He has given him his full support here. But the other question is, are Republicans satisfied by what they hear today, or does this continue to escalate?
And we should note, there was the retirement of the previous commander of U.S. Southern Command. It was Admiral Halsey. This was announced back in October, and CNN at the time learned that Hegseth didn't believe that this commander was moving quickly or aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers. But they were concerned that some of the operations were not lawful. This guy escaped because he left, obviously, and now we're in the scenario maybe some military people would be concerned about, which is you're on the Hill answering these questions.
Right. And, they're walking into a Capitol Hill that has a very short leash for this Pentagon. There's been other things that have been happening outside of all of the conversation about the Caribbean and the Venezuelan boats. A lot of information that the Pentagon is not sharing with both Democrats and Republicans. I mean, there is not a deep well of sympathy for either Secretary Hegseth or the civilian command within the Pentagon right now. And so they're walking into that in addition to all these other items that are out there.
And to your point, here's how some lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, were asked about Hegseth. Like, do you have confidence in this guy? So here's just like a sampling.
Do you have confidence in Secretary Hegseth?
We'll make our decisions based on the facts of the case. We haven't got the facts yet in front of us in the classified setting.
Did you have confidence in him? You said that. Can you just like here? Thanks for your time.
Yes, to quote Mariah Carey, I don't know her. So, how do Democrats play this moment? And they've been on edge because over the last couple of days, they were raked over the coals for that PSA saying, look, troops, you don't have to follow unlawful orders. So how do they spend this morning?
Well, I mean, I think both of those messages are still relevant. I mean, I don't think Democrats are walking off of the point that you should not pursue illegal actions. I mean, that's at the center of this conversation right now, whether or not the administration's actions were actually legal, whether or not there was war crimes committed or even murder that was committed. So I think those Democrats are still feeling justified in those messages. But, I've run communications for all the big investigations from Benghazi to even the Russia interference in the election. And here's what I think the investigators are going to be focused on in the conversation with the Admiral today. One is, what were the extent of the orders? What were the orders from the secretary? And then secondly, was the secretary there and in the room, as he said on Fox News, watching the entire strike from beginning to
he
end?
left because very busy.
Which is hard to believe that you would leave. My understanding is that the strikes happen back to back. So those are going to be the questions here. And it's only Hegseth continues to dig a hole even deeper for himself.
I don't think it was back to back because it took time for them to climb back in the boat, try to retrieve what they could of the drugs, and to try to get help, and then you double tap them. So it wasn't back to back. Depends on your definition of back to back. Back to back to me is like within seconds. I think it took a little longer than seconds. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 35, which is 35 parts per million, or the Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million. They're at different price points based on your affordability, but you take them the same way. Take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds, swallow it. This will boost up your immune system. It helps the health of your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, maintains your mucosal barrier, and helps the health of your epithelial cells. Super important. That will boost up your immune system. You take this every day. I've been doing this protocol for more than 5 years. In addition, if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day, apply it the same way, swish in your mouth, gargle, swallow it. All right? Once everything's all clear, you go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. But this is part of an anti-aging protocol, and it also helps to boost up your immune system. Now, if you pay attention to people that get sick all the time, they age faster, 100% guaranteed. If you stop the chain of chronic infection, you age slower. Amazing how that works. I can tell you for 5 hours why that is, but you don't have the time. But it's true. People that chronically get sick age much faster. So, you want to take my advice or not? I don't really care. But if you do care about your health, get the products, make sure you use discount 5, you get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, get a free gift until supplies last. Another great product that I have that will help with your brain function is Clarity Factor. Now, it's really important to pay attention to this. Why? Because people that are 40 years of age or older in a post-2020 crisis era, there's going to be about 30% of the individuals that are 40 years of age or older within 5 years are going to get early onset of dementia because of the aftershock of the crisis. It's going to be broken into those 30% of the people that are 40 years of age or older will be broken into 3 different categories. The first category, which is the highest percentage, 75% of the 30% will get ischemic dementia, microclotting, microbleeding. 24.9% approximately are going to get amyloidosis, building up a plaque. And 0.1%, maybe up to 0.5%, most likely 0.1%, will be prion disease. And that's because of inflammation causing misfolding of proteins that leads to an accumulation of these proteins. Prion disease is a subset of amyloidosis. So you better start protecting your brain by bringing down inflammation, by helping your cardiovascular health, and by taking neurostacks. Get the clarity factor. Clarity factor will get rid of brain fog. It will allow you to concentrate and help with the dendritic connection so your neurons are linking up together so you'll be able to think faster and have better memory. And what this will do is help build better neural networks. Now you have to create a microenvironment also. So the proper supplementation, and then you do the proper exercise. Do some cardio to get better blood flow. When you're getting better blood flow and you're controlling your lipid profile, reducing plaque formation, getting better blood flow to the brain, and reducing inflammation at the neuron level, and soaking up free radicals at the neuron level, you're creating a microenvironment for healthy neurons. Now, you don't want to pay attention to me, you might fall in the 30% category. It's up to you. I don't really care. Please go to my store, get the clarity factor.
Welcome back. President Trump strengthening ties with Taiwan with a new executive order. The State Department will now review contracts and guidelines for engagement with Taiwan. China has been increasing its aggression against Taiwan in recent weeks. Taiwan boosting its defense spending by $40 billion to counter Beijing's military might, and it's planning to purchase arms and defense technology from the United States. Joining me now, the GETTR Institute Senior Fellow, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What's your reaction to this move on Taiwan?
Well, this is very good on the part of President Lai in Taiwan. The important point here is that he wants to spend more. He wants to buy U.S. weapons. And that's really important for President Trump, who has been talking about this during the campaign, for instance, about how Taiwan needed to buy more U.S. products, especially weapons. But the problem is that the opposition Kuomintang, KMT, basically controls the legislature. They're the largest party there, and with their coalition partner, they're able to block and water down defense spending. So it's going to be a really important test to see what happens in the legislature.
Well, President Trump is making a lot of very positive moves to push back against the aggression from Communist China. And one of them is partnering and strengthening these ties. But China's foreign minister met with his Russian counterpart in Moscow yesterday to reaffirm their global partnership. This is coming just hours after U.S. and Russian officials negotiated for 5 hours at the Kremlin yesterday, coming out of that meeting with no agreement on Ukraine. We're still waiting here, but it's interesting to see these red lines being drawn with China cozying up to Russia, continuing to.
Yes, and it was no coincidence that you have the Chinese foreign minister, Wang Yi, in Moscow at the same time that Witkoff and Kushner were there. And remember, this is the same Wang Yi that in early July told the EU counterpart, Kaja Kallas, that China does not want the war in Ukraine to end. And there, Witkoff and Kushner are trying to end the war. So you can see that Putin is probably being influenced by the Chinese not to do anything to stop the fighting.
Well, it's interesting because China is partnering with Russia at the time that Japan is partnering with the United States. And the U.S. has been able to create many, many more alliances, including Japan, to push back on China as well. Another very important move that President Trump has made.
Yeah, Japan is really important because it has a very capable military. They don't call it that. They call it the Self-Defense Forces. China right now has picked this fight with Japan. Japan has not backed down. And the Chinese right now are hysterical. And I think one of the reasons why Wang Yi was in Moscow was to enlist Russia in its rhetorical fight against Japan.
Yeah, I mean, Beijing also slamming the United Kingdom this morning as the country once again delays a decision for China to build a mega embassy in the heart of London. The UK will now decide January 20th, citing national security concerns. Now, why would they put a gigantic embassy from China in the middle of London, Gordon?
Especially over sensitive cables that run underneath the Royal Mint, which is what China wants to take over. That's 20,000 square meters.
Wow.
No wonder why they call it a mega embassy. And clearly, Britain should not give approval. Most people think that Keir Starmer, the prime minister, will give approval because he's going to Beijing in the early part of next year and he wants to have this sort of wrapped up.
Okay.
But they should not. They should not give approval for that.
So let's talk about the U.S.'s relations with China right now. A lot of back and forth over the rare earth minerals issue, but now we've got soybean prices declining as China buys up more American products. That's set to extend into next year. China buying an estimated 2 million metric tons of American soybeans in November during the 2025 and 2026 marketing year. American agricultural products now shipping around the world due to the president's recent trade deals. And Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins says China is vowing to stop soybean purchases from Brazil. Watch this.
For so long, our farmers, many many of them have been farming for government checks instead of moving their product around the world. These trade deals changed that forever. Just a couple of days ago, China announced that they were going to halt all purchases from Brazil because they had found some irregularities in some of the soybeans they're buying from Brazil. And what that means is a continued signal that this country and our farmers produce the best, highest quality soybeans, sorghum, etc. in the world. And what you've been able to do is open those markets up.
So what do you think, Gordon? Are they keeping their promises on soybean purchases?
Well, they're buying more soybeans, but they're not buying enough to meet their commitment of 12 million metric tons by the end of the year. Now, the Treasury Secretary yesterday said, well, China's on track to meet it by February of next year. Well, that's not the commitment. The commitment is the end of this year. So clearly we got a problem. Also, Bessent actually told you when you interviewed him that there would be a rare earths deal by Thanksgiving. Well, that hasn't happened either. So I think China is playing the Trump administration, and it's time for President Trump to start imposing higher tariffs to say to the Chinese, we're not putting up with this delay.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, I wonder, you're right. Bessent did say that we were going to see a signed contract. We haven't seen that yet. But I also spoke with the Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Paul Atkins this week. We met on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and we talked about disclosures. He wants to make it easier for companies to go public. But when talking about disclosures, I asked him about disclosures from Chinese companies that are traded on U.S. exchanges. Watch this. So if a stock is on one of the entity lists in America, should an American investor buy that company?
Well, we have all those sorts of things, the Treasury and the Defense Department are going to put out lists of the firms that are under sanctions or whatever. But so those are obviously cases that under law, they're treated differently. I'm talking about other sorts of, foreign private issuers that, again, have a different type of setup where they are incorporated outside of China. Operations are still there or somewhere else, in Asia, and then, are their primary listing here in the U.S.
Gordon, I think we hit on a very, very specific vulnerability here in this whole relationship. I mean, if you've got Chinese companies that are sanctioned already and on Pentagon entity lists, how do you make the case that it's okay for an investor to buy that stock?
Well, you can't. And you asked an important question of the SEC chairman. And the SEC
here's the thing.
Here's
the thing is that we should not be investing in companies that are Chinese that are on a problematic list, either for war or for sanctions or for national security or whatever, right? We need to look in the mirror. We built up China through Walmart so you can buy cheap spatulas. We shipped our jobs to China because Wall Street and a bunch of MBAs from Harvard said this is best for shareholder value. Fast forward to 2025, and we may have a war within months or in a couple of years with China over Taiwan. Big problem. The MBAs caused it, and the FDI money that flowed into China. Oh, the automobile companies thought, open up the China market and we'll be able to sell so many cars. Did GM sell that many cars? No. Oh, we have to open up the Chinese market so they can sell jewelry from Tiffany's. Did that happen? Yes. Oh, we have to open up the Chinese market so they make cheap goods so Walmart can buy them and sell them at a higher margin in their stores. Did that happen? Yes. What was the end result? The Walmart family ended up becoming billionaires, one of the richest families in the United States. And Americans lost their jobs. And it's going to be Americans that actually know how to fight that are going to try to save our hegemonic power around the 9-dash line in the Pacific, around China. Sad thing is American investors caused the problem. Let's go to Senator Kennedy.
What if you could close projects faster and win back 20 hours every week? Meet Ideal House, the AI platform built for architects and interior designers.
Before we do that, before we go to Senator Kennedy talking about his book, please go to my store and get the structural nano silver drops. Very important. You can get them in blueberry, cherry flavor, and also in honey and lemon. The moment you have that throat irritation, take these drops right away. Have some at work, have some at home. These are very high quality. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Take these right away to mitigate the problem. Because if you can mitigate the problem, it's not as severe. Super important for the winter season. And get vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Super important for the winter. And vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium. When you do resistance training, you get better bone density. And vitamin D3 helps with cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 also helps with gene expression. It's a cofactor for gene expression. So if you're not getting enough vitamin D3, your genes don't express as well. That means your tissues don't perform as well. So please go to my store, get the vitamin D3, and make sure you do some resistance training.
How to test negative for stupid and why Washington never will. A #1 New York Times bestseller. Louisiana. How did they put your name in the New York Times, #1, right?
Yeah.
New York Times bestseller.
Well, they just got confused. That's what it is. They didn't take their meds, but I'm very proud of it. We've been #1.
Well, Scott Bessent just declared them no longer the paper of record.
Well,
I'm disputing it on this point. I think you deserve it.
But we've been #1 for 2 weeks. I'm very, very grateful.
I am very troubled that you have senators and congressmen that are saying, whoa, you must not obey a president, the commander-in-chief's illegal orders, and not one of them can name an illegal order.
The last few days, Sean, have been surreal. I mean, honestly. Many of my Democratic colleagues, some Republicans, they've been acting like Jack Nicholson in The Shining. I mean, they're just hysterical. They've clearly exceeded the limits of their meds. They're running around. They call the president a warmonger. They call the secretary of war a war criminal. They're speaking directly to our folks in the military, telling them to disobey orders. they're out of control. And they're confusing two issues. First, legally, there is no question. You don't have to be Oliver Wendell Scalia to know this, that the president has the authority under the Constitution, Article 2, to use military force without congressional approval. I mean, he's the commander-in-chief.
Every president has done it.
Every president since World War II. I mean, President Truman dropped bombs on Japan. President Clinton bombed Serbia. President George H.W. Bush went into Panama. None of the Democrats said a word when we bombed Iran and took them out. So they're wrong on the law. Now, what on the other question, of course, is a moral issue. Should the president be doing this to narco-terrorists, to drug dealers? And I think if the president were here right now, Sean, he'd look in the eye and he would say, these people are killing our children.
Exactly.
We know who they are. We know they're state-sponsored. I've declared them to be foreign terrorists, which gives me the right to use military force. And that's what he is doing, and I think that the American people will support him and will continue to.
The American people, I doubt there's anybody watching now that doesn't know somebody who lost a relative or a child to a drug overdose, be it opioids or fentanyl, that doesn't understand how real this issue is. The idea that you have 300 horsepower outboard engines and you're flying through these waterways, I don't think you're out there to catch fish. So common sense has to be applied. They are inundating our country with drugs. They're poisoning our country. And then on top of it, for no reason at all, even before all of this, they've been telling people, well, you don't have to listen to the president. What kind of atmosphere does that create?
Makes you wonder if Senator Kelly is just a sounding piece for the deep state. Maybe he's getting ready to run for president for 2028 election. Maybe Senator Kelly says it's okay to have black ops for the CIA and poison our population because that's just a society that's expendable for the deep state. Senator Kelly's a traitor.
And look, I've met with Marco Rubio about this issue. We've talked about the legal aspects, but also, my Democratic colleagues are saying, well, how do you know that they're drug dealers? They're not out there fishing, as you put it. Our intelligence is extraordinary. Well, someone in our meeting asked Marco, said, how sure are you that these guys are running drugs? He said 110%. Our military intelligence is breathtaking. And he's right.
Well, what's wrong with some of your Republican colleagues? Because, it's like at times, they show this weakness or desire. They want to show that they're fair and go along with the Democratic colleagues. No such consideration would ever be given to them because both Biden and Obama, and I'll go back to Bill Clinton, they killed innocent civilians. All three of them as president. Nobody ever brings that up.
Well, I don't mind my colleagues asking rational questions. I don't. Certainly don't mind my Republican colleagues, but there's several. I can think of one in particular on the Republican side.
Lost his mind. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, he has just denigrated the president. He's accused the president of everything but abandoning his children to wolves. I mean, he states categorically the president is committing a war crime. These drug smugglers deserve due process. They've been declared foreign terrorists, just like Osama bin Laden was. Presidents have done it all the time, and you may disagree with it, but clearly under the Constitution, the president has the authority to use lethal military force against our enemies. And the idea that these drug dealers and drug cartels are not trying to to undermine the national security of the United States is ludicrous. They're killing our children.
You ever think it'd be a #1 New York Times best-selling author?
No. I still have to pinch myself, but I'm very.
Last question. What's your favorite line in your own book?
The one that they wouldn't let me use for the title. I wanted the title to be "Always Be Yourself Unless You Suck." And they said, "No, Kennedy, you can't use that as a title."
I don't know.
But I put it in the book.
I actually have a title in my head. Everything I wanted to say on the air, but knew would get me fired.
Yeah,
It just intrigues people. It's not that I have.
Then I don't fire you, Hannity. Then I don't fire you.
I hope not. You'll be my lawyer.
You come and work
Senator,
for
good to
us.
see you, man.
Good to
Appreciate
see
it.
you, Sean.
Thank you.
Man.
We always appreciate you coming in.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to.
I think Senator Kennedy actually has a lot of common sense, and there's that Southern sensibility about him. Maybe we need more of that in this country. Maybe we need more common sense and less legality, less a bunch of talking heads that think that they're part of the intelligentsia because they have a law degree. Maybe we need people that actually use some common sense and says, enemy bad, kill enemy. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals, including PFAS, and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. When you urinate them out regularly and you clean your environment and you stop ingesting these chemicals, guess what? Your endocrine system and your immune system gets better. Your body starts to get better. You have less aches and pains. You have more vitality. Amazing how that works. So take a look at your house. If you have cleaning supplies that you can get rid of them, especially in the basement or the garage. But if you have to have them, paints and cleaning supplies, make sure they're in double containers because they do degas and there's microchemicals that are in your environment that you ingest. So pay attention to that. Drink filtered water. Make sure you filter your water, and stay away from processed foods. And take zeolite. And when you do that regularly, all it takes is 3 small drops underneath your tongue. This is a long-lasting supply here. So just take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water each day. It's that simple. And guess what? You will notice that your body is performing better. You'll notice that your endocrine system and your immune system is better. When you're detoxifying your body, you'll even think better. It's amazing how that works. We are bombarded by tons of chemicals in our environment. It's important to clean your environment, detoxify your body. Another great way to detoxify your body is to take the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This is a month's supply. You take it every day. It's a micronutrient protein. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. I take it with hummus, but you can mix it with other food. But it's very high quality, and it's going to help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation. When you do that, that's helping your cardiovascular system. That's helping with your joint health. That's helping with your brain function. By bringing down inflammation regularly, you're creating a microenvironment to improve your neurons. When you're bringing down inflammation, you're helping your endocrine system and your immune system. This is powerful stuff. Take it every day. You can stack it with the zeolite. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and start detoxifying your body on a regular basis. And you will notice that you're aging slower. It works. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Let's go to, I want to listen to The Hill. Dealing with Tim Waltz over Somalia welfare fraud. I'm not familiar with this story, so I'll listen in and give you my opinion.
How's biz, Ash? Great, especially with the help of zero accounting software. I can keep my cash flow flowing by giving customers more ways to pay. So it's zero with an X.
The world's first titanium nonstick pan. It's gonna blow your hair back. I'm Mike Brigale, 3 Michelin chef, and I've been cooking for 25 years.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today. Lindsay, today I will concede that we are in very complementary colors and actually have been all week, if you've noticed.
That means we're on the good birthday vibe.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
We're vibing.
And I know you don't believe in astrology and all that.
Oh my
nonsense,
God. But I keep having co-hosts who do.
Can I just tell you?
Brianna, Kim, same way. Go ahead.
You're a Leo, I'm a Sagittarius, and no matter how much you want to force it and fight it, we just get along. It just works.
Long-time viewers,
Peanut butter jelly.
This is a thing. This keeps happening. I'm always with people. I've learned to appreciate astrology a lot more than I would.
It's a beautiful, fun thing. You don't take it too seriously, but you should enjoy.
All right, I'm on board with that.
Thank you. Coming up on Rising, private wealth seems to be an unofficial operating arm in President Trump's administration. I'll definitely be breaking all that down about all these donations that have come his way in my lens later on.
Plus, Charlie Kirk ally Blake Neff is breaking his silence on the many claims that Candace Owens, my favorite person, has been making about Turning Point USA and Kirk's death. Will be really interesting to talk about.
And Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro had some fiery words for Vice President Kamala Harris over what she wrote about him in her book. But first, Robbie, what is on your radar today?
Can't wait to get to all of that. But first, denial is not just a river in Egypt. It's also a recurring segment on The View. Yesterday, the ladies discussed the Tim Walz welfare scandal, which has become a very big story indeed. It turns out that 80 or 90 people, most of them Somalian, stole $1 billion in welfare funds from the public, and the state's governor, Walz, ignored whistleblower reports that something was amiss, possibly because Walz and other top Democrats did not want to alienate Somali voters, since they're a big constituency in the state. Walz, of course, was Kamala Harris's pick for Veep, a choice that speaks to the, shall we say, very, very short vetting window. One might have thought that Democrats or Republicans would have noticed the welfare fraud story, but national media has only seized on it following an expose by conservative writer Christopher Rufo. But I digress. While many Americans are outraged by these revelations, the ladies of The View think that the right is merely directing hatred towards Somalians, akin to Trump and Vance's criticisms of Haitians. Let's take a look.
Every time that happens, he pulls out a race card.
Mm-hmm.
Last time it was the Haitians who were eating the pets, and now it's the Somalis in Minnesota, who, by the way, there's only 84,000 Somalis in Minnesota, and 58% of them were born in the United States.
Yeah, and 87% of them are naturalized citizens.
Yeah. But one of my spies told me that he lost support with the Somali Minnesota voters over the Biden administration's handling of Gaza. So again, it's personal. Everything's personal with him.
Look, I'm sorry, but the story's nothing like the Haitian pet eating story, which was in fact largely made up. It was wrong and shameful for national Republicans to echo it. This story, though, it's not made up. It's very, very real and very serious. Now, like the Haitian story, it would absolutely be wrong to engage in crude racial stereotyping about Somalians, the vast majority of whom committed no crimes. But the story itself is real, and it's damning. And it is a true indictment of Tim Walz's governance. That's where I want to focus. And that's where Republicans should keep it. To the GOP, I say, please avoid the tendency to paint with a broad racial brush. As conservative radio host Eric Erickson wrote on X, GOP, Christopher Rufo has handed you an 80-20 issue with the Somali fraud story, and the Democrats are now circling the wagons. Don't screw it up. By the way, making it a race issue will screw it up. I agree with him indeed. There are already some signs this issue could get screwed up, as My Pillow CEO Mike Lindell has now indicated he wishes to run for governor against Mike Walz. Mike Lindell is, put it nicely, very nicely, too extreme to win a general election. The GOP would like to run on a platform of good governance and repairing the damage to Minnesota that has occurred under Walz's watch. Then they'll need a sane, moderate, experienced candidate, not a conservative media bomb thrower. Please take note, GOP. Please listen to me this time. You usually don't, but I'd like it if you consider it this time.
So I want to start from the top. I know that you love to criticize the ladies at the View, my friends. But I think that
I do.
Where's Elizabeth? Well, she's pregnant, so I'm assuming maybe she's taking a minute.
Congratulations.
So the president at a cabinet meeting called Somali people garbage. And so you acting like we should just skip over that racist part of the conversation is problematic.
I said we should not engage in it.
Yeah, no, but the president engaged in it. So for them not to address it is not appropriate for the type of show they have. They have discussion on why this can go left based on historically how the president has.
The Haitian story, which was just a false accusation.
Yes, which is
these accusations are true.
Fine, so separate the two, but we can discuss that the president used ridiculous language to describe an entire community that's inappropriate, right? Saying garbage, right? That we can both agree on that, if you would like to agree. But separately from the story, that has been my biggest concern, that we want to demonize an entire community for what would be, I brought up the numbers yesterday, 0.25% of the entire Somali population in the U.S. So the representation of people that committed fraud in Minnesota doesn't even represent 1% of the Somali migrants in the U.S. But I want to talk about
not a significant percentage of Somalians committed fraud.
Yes.
A significant percentage of people who committed fraud were Somalians.
In this particular situation. So according to CBS, this case was part of a larger scale trend that was happening during the pandemic. If we're talking about the $250 million that people were involved in, I think about 70 of the 80 people we're talking about were involved in this case that was COVID-19 fraud and was collecting funds inappropriately and using them the wrong way. But during the pandemic, you said that
this is the reason why the government should have never issued this money, because it always leads to fraud. Oh, we got to save it. You know what it was? There were a lot of people that didn't need it. They were actually claiming for the funds. And then on top of it, some of it wasn't even needed to be paid back. This is just another giveaway that leads to inflation. You know, Hayek was right. You start giving the society freebies, it's going to lead to a costly end result through inflation, because it's not productive. And then there's corruption, and then you have politicians that are involved, you have constituents that have a means to fleece the American taxpayer. And if you're born a Somali, let's say that you're born in Somalia and you immigrate to the United States legally, all right? Yeah, you were born a Somalian, but if you naturalize, you're an American. You're not a hyphenated American. There's no such thing as a hyphenated American. You're either American or not, if you naturalize. Now, if you immigrate and you're not naturalized, but you're here illegally, then you're a guest, or you're a Somalian in this case, right? But if they've naturalized, they're American. They lose this hyphenated status. If they're born here, but their parents immigrated from Somalia, they're an American. They're not Somalian. See, this is part of the little confusion that takes place with trying to divide and create oppressor and oppressed. See, subdivide the people so you can control their thinking. Oh, you're a hyphenated American. You're a Hungarian American. You're a Russian American. You're an Italian American. No, you're not. You're an American if you're naturalized or born here. Period. You're not a hyphenated anything. But no, you gotta pay attention to the patriarchy. You gotta stop the colonialism. Then why the fuck are you here? We gotta stop the hyphenation. Guess what? There's an awful lot of people of color that have a tendency to actually fleece the taxpayer. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed this? Why is that? Oh, it's their right because of colonialism. See, this is nothing but an extension of the overall game plan of fleecing American taxpayers and issue reparations. That's what the Democratic Party represents.
250 million of that is the biggest fraud case they were looking into years ago during the pandemic. Across the U.S., almost $1 trillion, CBS is reporting, was lost due to fraud. It breaks my heart too. So it was a terrible time. And when you think about what Minnesota people were doing, it's not this anomaly that was happening in Minnesota and that's it. It was literally like across the country, unfortunately, people were committing fraud and they all should be prosecuted. And many of these people in the fraud case that was happening during the pandemic have been prosecuted, and Waltz has laid out all the ways that he's pursued these people and said at the time of the pandemic, it wasn't the right time for him to go worry about fraud when he was worried about trying to save people and following what the orders were coming from above.
I would like my governors to always be worried about fraud and like.
Yeah, but it's easy to say in a moment of
well, that's where I want to focus.
International
I think
pandemic
that reflects a really bad governance on his part. It's like we'll ask questions later. No, you gotta ask questions now.
But he wasn't the only one. Across the country, fraud was happening. We said $1 trillion was lost. So blame every single Republican and Democratic governor that didn't do a good job at accounting for the fraud from the U.S.
The money should have never been issued because it ended up being inflationary on top of the fraud. It should have never been issued. It's that simple. Part of the problem that we have with inflation now is because of the over-reliance of government during Lehman and the over-reliance of government during the pandemic.
International individual. Now, I'll give you that Tim Waltz has a response from COVID that I'll accept because of the unprecedented times. But there are recent accounts, as recent as this summer, where new fraud was happening in Minnesota that I looked into from reading this article.
He's still the governor.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so he cannot use that.
He's going for a third term.
And he can't use that excuse that it was unprecedented times. There's actual stuff that happened in September and August that were fraud, I believe, of elderly people trying to find them housing assistance that was completely fraudulent. And so that accounts for the other people that we're talking about that's more recent.
Democrats. That's what you get. Fraud. Oh, well, of course there's fraud on the Republican side. But I'm telling you, the Democratic Party is about fleecing America. What about all these Democrats that have these NGOs and nonprofits and they're connected with people in Congress? Then all of a sudden they get a big grant, like $100,000 or $1 million. Look at Chelsea Clinton. What about Michelle Obama? She seemed to be getting a bunch of money, and then all of a sudden they turned off the tap. Why was she getting all this money? No one talks about it. Must have been for plastic surgery.
And so he has to come up with new responses other than unprecedented times, because right now and in August and September, we're not unprecedented. So he should respond to that and acknowledge that, yes, there were discrimination lawsuits that followed, which is why he might have been hesitant from Somali populations that were in this specific case.
Oh, okay, that's beautiful. They're going to commit fraud, and then if you try to call them out for that or prosecute them, they're going to say we're
well. The Feeding Our Future group had a discrimination case going towards. So you would be hesitant thinking that something is happening here where they're isolating one community.
So they're going to rob us and then weaponize our discrimination law.
No, I think it should be thrown out. But that's what I'm saying. Like, all this was happening at once, which is why he might have had a slow response to the COVID incident. But the ones this summer, he should have a quick response and a quick answer as to why he wasn't looking into it. Because this issue has been boiling over for years. And just now, yes, like you said, the mainstream media is picking it up and paying attention.
Lindsay, you know that I am, by and large, a supporter of increased immigration.
Yes.
I am an outlier in that respect of people on the right.
Yeah.
People on the right want very little or no immigration at this point. And that's that's one of the more popular views of the GOP is harsher limits on immigration. So I'm laser focused on incidents like this that I know will cause a backlash against immigration. And that is, again, that is going to go to an 80-20 or 90-10 issue when people, I know not all of them were immigrants, but their parents immigrated here from some.
We need to have a comprehensive, common sense immigration policy. We need to have people coming here legally, not illegally. If they're here illegally, they need to get the fuck out. I don't care if they've been here for 30 years and have kids and have grandkids. Don't care. They need to get the fuck out. But we need to bring in people legally. Now, in terms of the H-1B visa, they got to make sure that we hire our youth that are coming out of college and making sure that they are given the opportunity to grow their career before some sort of foreign national. And what is happening is corporate America is taking advantage of the H-1B visa, hiring people for less money, and because of their status, they have a hold on them versus someone that is American born. I'd much rather, you have to remember, our tax-paying dollars go to universities that are public and goes to the public school system, the primary school system, to educate our citizens, our legal citizens. And when they get out of college and they can't find a job because of an H-1B visa holder, because they came here for an education and want to stay, you know what? They should get behind to the back of the line. And our American citizens coming out of college should be hired first. Unfortunately, Robbie thinks that, oh, you just bring in the H-1B visa holders. No. No. The problem is that as time goes on, we have less and less really good students coming out of college that know how to read, how to write, how to design, how to perform properly in a work environment. And if we don't get a handle on this, we're going to lose our economic and military prowess.
A substantial minority community comes here, causes great fraud, and then weaponizes our protections against discrimination to save themselves. That is going to make people want, okay, no more immigration from Africa, or no more immigration overall. And I am worried about that because I think that would make us a poorer country, a worse off society. But that's going to take some policing of the bad actors among us so as to not poison people against immigration entirely.
And I agree, it's a problem, but we can't isolate one community just because of the bad actors that are several and very few and far between. There's a very small amount of them. So that's the biggest issue for me.
Up next, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is accusing the New York Times of unfairly covering President
All right, we're going to cover another video by Turley dealing with the recklessness of Tim Waltz. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. This will boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. And also get the vitamin C and magnesium. Boosts up your immune system, helps with brain function, and helps with your skin. Take them together, improve that immune system and brain function. Super important. Take this especially during the winter season. But you should be taking this year-round as part of your anti-aging protocol. Again, if you regularly feed your brain properly with the proper nutrients, you'll have better neural connections. You will think better. You will have better memory. If you regularly improve your immune system, you're not as sick as often. And guess what? You slow down the aging process. Please go to my store and get the dual-purpose deodorants. You can get it in citrus, and you can also get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These deodorants are for males and females. It's dual-purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, and it will detoxify your body. And when you use this regularly, you improve your immune system and your endocrine system. These are very high-quality deodorants. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. You can't get anything better than this. You can't go to the store and get something better than this. Nothing out there. There's nothing out there as good as this. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps. Get $5 off. Spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen in to Turley about Waltz.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy.
All right, the House Oversight Committee joining the Treasury Department in investigating claims that Minnesota tax dollars were sent to a terror-based group in Somalia. And even the Washington Post is calling out Governor Tim Walz for his role in the scandal. Quote, the governor is not helping himself by refusing to take responsibility for the welfare fraud that happened in plain sight during the pandemic. Fox News contributor and George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley joins us now. Professor Turley, when I look at this story, I see quotes from the defense team here that's defending some of these individuals. No one was doing anything about the red flags. And so how does this happen? Going back to 2022, there were prosecutions for this scheme, and we're just now learning about it?
Yeah, Kaylee, it's baffling. And to have Governor Waltz say, well, I don't deal with abstractions, there's nothing abstract about this. In a short period of time, the number of autism centers increased by 700%. The amount of funding increased by 3,000%. I mean, these people were virtually taking the furniture out of the governor's mansion. And the most that Waltz can say is that, well, we're a prosperous and generous state. Well, that's not going to cut it. This is not your money. And anyone who looks at those numbers, and this point was made by the Washington Post, could not help but say, wow, there's an amazing amount of fraud occurring in my state. So it's as you noted, this is belated, but it's really needed. I mean, we have to be able to hold people like Waltz to account. If you burn $1 billion through sheer negligence, just blind recklessness, then there's got to be some accounting. You've got to appear and answer for these questions.
So do you think Walz will actually have to appear before the House Oversight Committee?
I think he might. And, you know, without any question, he and his administration are going to have to answer some questions. He's going to have to do better than he did over the weekend. I mean, he basically offered a shrug and a smile. Well, there's $1 billion missing on the table, and someone's going to have to answer for it.
Yeah, taxpayer dollars potentially to terrorists. It's crazy. There's also this story, Professor Turley. There's a judge who blocked ICE from making warrantless arrests in D.C. without a flight risk proof. And that comes as California is launching a new online portal to report misconduct by the feds. You know, I want to start with the first one. This is what Judge Beryl Howe ruled. Defendant's systemic failure to apply the probable cause standard, including the failure to consider escape risk, directly violates the clear statutory requirements under the INA, that's the Immigration and Nationality Act, and DHS's implementing regulations. Is this merited? It seems like it puts handcuffs on ICE.
It does put handcuffs on ICE, and this really captures the problem that they're facing. The Biden administration opened up the southern border and let millions of people through. And people like Mayorkas said, well, we're doing everything we can. We now know that was a lie because the Trump administration shut down the southern border within weeks using the same authority Mayorkas and Biden had. But once these millions were in the country, you have many in Congress that said, well, we don't want to make it any easier to remove them. And so what ICE is looking at and what the administration is looking at are, you know, millions of people that they would now be required to get individual warrants for. And that would just reduce this to a slow crawl when they're trying to gain some ground back of what was lost during the Biden administration. Really, the Supreme Court's going to have to look at these standards. The administration is saying we should only have to show reasonable suspicion that someone's in this country illegally, and we believe these people are flight risks. This judge has good faith reasons why she said, you know, I think the law says to the contrary. The question is, where is Congress? Where's Congress to say we've got a crisis? The previous administration allowed millions of people unvetted into this country, and we have to take the system and reform it so we can move greater numbers for deportation.
You're right, Congress would be a great assist in this, and where are they? We can continue to ask that. And here's Governor Gavin Newsom. He said this: we're not going to stand by while anyone, including federal agents, abuse their authority in California. This new portal gives Californians an easy and safe way to speak up, share what they see, and help us hold people accountable. No one is above the law. Professor Turley, is it really ICE and DHS and CBP that need to be held accountable, or the criminal illegal aliens in this country Well, we've learned this week just of 3 terror plots that were being planned by people here in this country. In those cases, legal immigrants to the country.
Well, this rhetoric is fueling the rise of attacks on ICE officers. We just had a person that tried to throw Molotov cocktails at an ICE building, and yet you have members like Representative Boldman saying he doesn't see any evidence of an increase in attacks against ICE. And so there's this, again, willful blindness on one side saying, really, these are a bunch of Gestapo and Nazis, and we don't see any really increased attacks. They're linked. The rhetoric is linked to these attacks. Now, look, if you want to create a troll site about ICE, that is your right. You can do that. But at the end of the day, the question is going to be responsibility for fueling a lot of the violence that has been committed against these ICE officers.
Yeah, the rhetoric is linked to the attacks. Greg Bavino told me when they call them Nazis and all of these horrible words, he hears them on the streets in mere hours from people on the ground towards his ICE officials. It's crazy. Professor Turley, thank you. Wilson, great to see you.
I'm Steve.
Waltz is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He's not very bright. And he's probably allowing for people to take advantage of these social programs. So yeah, he was reckless in the funds that he was a custodian of to helping his state. And there needs to be an investigation. All right. Live Now did a clip about calls for Hegseth to resign as Trump set to release Venezuelan boat strike video. So I don't believe it's been released yet. I've been following this pretty closely here. So before we go to Live Now's clip, which was published approximately an hour ago, please go to my store, help support the work that I do, and help support your health and wellness. If you pay attention to these different supplements that I have on my store and you take them, you're going to slow down the aging process and improve your overall health. These are supplements that I take every day. I've been doing this for a very long time. I'm in my 50s. I've been taking antioxidants and different supplements over the decades, going all the way back to when I was 16 years old. The reason being, heart disease runs rampant on my mother's side of the family. My brother died from heart disease. And, people need to be cognizant of their health. If you pay attention to what I have to say, I can save your life. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the omega-3. This is going to help to bring down LDL levels. It'll help to increase your HDL levels, control that lipid profile, bring down inflammation. And when you do that on a regular basis, you're going to reduce plaque formation. In addition, omega-3 helps to prevent the stickiness of your red blood cells. So it prevents overclotting. Take omega-3 every day. Make sure you do some cardio and resistance training. All right? Get better blood flow. When you get better blood flow to your brain, you're creating a microenvironment for better neural activity. Super important. Resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. It soaks up free radicals, helps the health of your mitochondria, boosts up your energy levels so you have more ATP. Resveratrol helps to get rid of senescent cells. It forces them to go into apoptosis. Resveratrol helps your basal layer for your skin. So when you're generating new skin cells, they're healthier. It stacks well with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. It's a great supplement. But to get the max benefits from it, make sure you stack it with one of the supplements that I just mentioned. The probiotic and the multivitamin are foundational pieces to the anti-aging protocol. By taking a good probiotic, you're going to help your gut biome. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients. You're going to bring down inflammation. You're help your immune system at the gut level. You're going to rev up your metabolism. The communication between your gut and your liver will improve, and the communication between your gut and your brain. When that happens, you're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to have consolidation of memory. You're going to be able to be well rested. And when you're detoxifying your central nervous system regularly through proper sleep, your brain function will improve. In addition, over time, you will also see improvements in your skin. So taking a good probiotic is super important. Go to my store, get the powdered version, which is what I'm showing you right now, or the VeggieCap version. And the complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. They are cofactors to allow for the shape of the enzyme to conform in such a way that conformation in such a way where your cells will perform better. The foundation of my anti-aging protocol is to take the probiotic and the multivitamin. The first pillar on top of that foundation is the Max 35 or cleanse. Boosts up your immune system. C60 is the second pillar to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to bring down inflammation that will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And Boomer Boost to rev up your metabolism. And if you pay attention to what I just mentioned in that protocol, you are targeting all of the mechanisms that are moving your body towards aging, all right? And when you target those vectors, you target those aging vectors, you're gonna slow down the aging process. Your energy levels go down when you get older. You boost up those energy levels with Boomer Boost. You build up free radicals when you get older. You're soaking up those free radicals with the C60. Your immune system starts to go down when you get older. You're boosting that up with the Max 35 cleanse, the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and lignans. And when you stack these accordingly, and you improve your gut biome, and you improve your metabolism, and you are improving your cellular processes with the conformation of the enzymes, you're going to slow down the aging process. And when you're bringing down that inflammation, soaking up those free radicals, you're slowing down cardiovascular plaque buildup. You're slowing down degeneration of your neurons. If you have chronic inflammation at the neuron level, you're going to literally Swiss cheese your brain. So if you pay attention to this protocol, it's very powerful. And you'll slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, take my advice, use discount 5. You get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. You're going to need that free gift. So please make sure that you follow what I have to say because it works. I'm older than Alex Jones. Does Alex Jones look younger than Dr. Paul Cottrell? Maybe you should follow Dr. Paul Cottrell's anti-aging protocol.
To this live look that we do have over the White House here, as our next story, of course, takes us over to D.C. Happening today, the U.S. Navy Admiral, who reportedly issued the orders to fire on survivors of a strike on an alleged drug boat near Venezuela, will brief lawmakers behind closed doors. Cameras not allowed inside for that classified briefing with Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley, who is now the commander of U.S. Special Operations Command. The testimony, though, could be pivotal as a congressional investigation unfolds into how Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, also known, of course, as the Secretary of War, handled the military operation in international waters near Venezuela and whether any laws were broken. Now, we did hear from President Donald Trump saying that essentially video of the second strike there that's in question will be released to the public. I do want to play that quick comment for you here on Live Now.
You released video of that.
Small business owners across the country are using Amazon to pick up, store, and deliver their products. Smell the roses, Julia.
Thank you so much.
See you down
there.
You released video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we certainly release, no problem. You know, we stopped every boat we knock out. We saved 25,000
American lives. And if you look at our numbers, the drugs coming in through sea are down 91%. I'm surprised there's 9% here. I don't know who's doing the 9%, but it's down 91, and we're going to start very soon on land, and I'm sure you're thrilled to hear that.
And of course, that was some of the video that you were seeing there on your screen. Now, later today, an unclassified and redacted report from the Pentagon Inspector General regarding what's known as Signalgate is expected to be made public as well there in D.C. The Associated Press saying the report details that Pete Hegseth put U.S. personnel and their mission at risk when he used the Signal messaging app to convey sensitive information about a military strike against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Hegseth does have the ability to declassify material, and the AP states the report did not find that he did so improperly, but it did find that he violated Pentagon policy by using his personal device for official business. Hegseth did decline to sit for an interview with the Pentagon's Inspector General, but provided a written statement. In it, Hegseth explained that he was permitted to declassify information as he saw fit. Now, he did post on social media after that report was made public, saying, quote, "No classified information, total exoneration, case closed. Houthis bombed into submission. Thank you for your attention to this IG report," end quote. Again, taking a live look here over the White House, and in just about an hour or so, Democratic U.S. Congressman Sri Thanedar will unveil his articles of impeachment against Hegseth. The Michigan lawmaker joining us now live ahead of that rally to talk about his reasons behind wanting Hegseth out of office. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. I know you have a busy day ahead of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And first off, I do want to ask you here if you can break down kind of the basics
Democrat from
behind your idea to introduce these articles of impeachment against Pete Hegseth.
Well, look, there are two issues. One is the Signalgate. He used a commercial app to talk about war plans, and he did not even know who is on the Signal chat. There was a editor reporter on the Signal chat. He was disclosing war plans, putting our service members at risk. And this was totally unacceptable. And that is an impeachable offense in my mind.
And of course, we definitely appreciate you because you are going to hold that rally here. And
who gives a shit what's in his mind?
What would you say is more important? Would it be the report on Signalgate or the strikes in Venezuela, or is it kind of a mix of both there?
It's both, both.
Throw it as hard as you want. Go on. Watching it zip away feels like it might just keep going, right? Nope, here it comes. This thing's a total game changer. Throw it across the park, over the driveway, always comes back. Hover in your hand like it's floating, glows like a little star. And yeah, my kids haven't stopped begging to play with it. No fancy setup, no frustration, just pure fun. Oh, and check the orange link below.
It's both, both. This Secretary of Defense is incompetent. He's incompetent to do his job. He is putting American troops in harm's way, in danger, because he has total disregard to the war plans and the secrets and how he has disclosed classified information. At the same time, we need to know what war laws is he following when he attacked those survivors, the two survivors on this boat that was destroyed by U.S. military.
What about legal, constitutional background here? What are you using as you do introduce these articles of impeachment? And then on that same note, do you feel that you have the support to essentially get this done, or is it more symbolic? I know a lot of questions there.
Well, it needs to be done. Both parties need to come together, look at it. Republicans need to look at this as laws have been broken. War crimes have been committed, and Hegseth, the secretary, is refusing to show up. He did not show up for the investigation by the investigators about this signal gate. He did not submit his phone. He did not show up in person. What is he hiding? What do they are hiding? This secretary is incompetent, and this is the second major, drawback, second major fault. And this secretary must go, and Congress must impeach him. He should resign, or Congress must impeach him. And President Trump cannot continue to defend this incompetent Secretary of State who's putting millions of service members' lives in danger.
Do you feel that it's a real possibility, a potential reality, that Hegseth would resign or be impeached here? Is that a reality, or, as I mentioned, is it more symbolic?
No, this secretary has to go. He's incompetent. He's violated. He has committed war crimes. He must go. And if
where's the proof that he created war crimes?
Are willing to look at this for the merit of this case and not just their law.
Isn't he not giving Hegseth his due process? Oh, Orange Man bad. Everyone attached to Orange Man must be bad too. Democrat. Right here. This is a Democrat. This is the reason why America fucking sucks.
To President Trump, this can be done. Look, we did this on the Epstein files. If enough Republicans come our way, we can get this done. This secretary must go. He is.
It's never going to happen.
And President Trump must realize that.
What message, as you do introduce these articles of impeachment against Secretary Hegseth, what information do you want the public to know out there? Because no question, if these are introduced and they do move forward in some way, all eyes of Americans will be on this as it plays out. So what message do you want to get across to the American people?
Well, look, the first strike destroyed these boats, and the two survivors who were fighting for their life were murdered. This is war crimes. And
what about the 50 or 80,000 people that die from drugs in the United States? Does he have a care for that? No, of course not. He cares about the narco-terrorists. This is the point I'm making. You got the Democratic Party that are weak.
Secretary broke their own, the Department of Defense own laws. And if this had happened to any member of U.S. military, that member would have lost his job. He would have been criminally prosecuted. And the secretary should be held to the same standards. He should be...
They have time to focus on Pete Hegseth, but they don't have any time to really look into Arctic frost. Amazing. Just amazing.
His crimes, and Congress must impeach him, or better yet, President should ask the secretary to resign because he has failed multiple times to do his job.
Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to be here on Live Now from Fox. I do know that you have this rally coming up here in just...
That congressman is a dipshit. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60 so you're not a dipshit like the Democratic Party. C60 is going to soak up free radicals. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. Take it every day. What this will do, you take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption, and it's going to soak up free radicals, reduce stress, and improve your tissues. Now, how it works is that this carbon molecule of 60 carbons will neutralize your free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger. One molecule is 1,000 times stronger, a little less, than vitamin C. All right? One molecule of vitamin C can only neutralize one free radical, but one molecule of C60 can neutralize hundreds, if not 1,000 free radicals. This is why it's so potent. Take a teaspoon a day. It's going to soak up free radicals in the cell, improve your mitochondria so you have more ATP, so you have more energy. When your cells have more energy, they perform better. The health of the mitochondria will get better, so that the overall health of the cell and the tissues will perform better. And then your organ systems and glands will perform better. Your immune system will improve, your endocrine system will improve, your brain function will improve, your cardiovascular health will improve because you're soaking up free radicals and reducing plaque formation. It's powerful, very powerful, and it's a cornerstone of my anti-aging protocol. So get the C60, take it every day, a teaspoon a day. Boost up that immune system. You take it before your workout, you will notice that you recover from your workout faster. Why? Because by soaking up free radicals while you're working out and reducing inflammation while you're working out, you will recover quicker. That's why it's so important to take the C60 before your workout, or the Gladiator barley, or even the heirloom barley, turmerics, lignans. Those also help to recover quicker after a workout. See, I'm telling you some little tricks to slow down the aging process. It's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, proper mindfulness or spirituality, learning new things. All these are very positive for improving your overall health. So when you get into your geriatric years, you're healthier. You're not dependent on pharmacopoeia. You need to invest in your body. Just like you have to invest for your retirement, you need to invest in your body. Please go to my store, follow my protocol, slow down the aging process. All right, let's listen to Jim Jordan. I have a feeling he's going to talk about Arctic frost here.
Welcome back. Good Thursday morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Thursday, December 4th. It is 8 a.m. on the button on the East Coast, and I hope you're having a good morning. The House Judiciary Committee sent a subpoena to former Special Counsel Jack Smith, demanding that he testify at a closed-door hearing on December 17th over his investigation into President Trump. His attorney said this, quote, nearly 6 weeks ago, Jack offered to voluntarily appear before the House Judiciary Committee in an open hearing to answer any questions lawmakers have. Jack looks forward to meeting with the committee later this month to discuss his work and clarify the various misconceptions about his investigation. President Trump also wants to see a public testimony.
The House Judiciary Committee has subpoenaed Jack Smith to ask about his investigation of you. I wondered, for a deposition, I wondered if you'd prefer to see that as a hearing so that the American public can see the questions and the responses more easily.
I'd rather see him probably at a hearing, and there's something really wrong with him. I'd rather see him testify publicly because there's no way he can answer the questions.
A top federal court.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half. They thought I got scammed. But when I showed them...
A top federal court official defending Judge James Boasberg, meanwhile, in his gag orders, which basically hid subpoenas related to the FBI's Arctic frost investigation. They claimed that the chief judge in Washington was likely unaware that the subpoena's intended targets were sitting members of Congress. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley fired back with this quote, Smith's apparent lack of candor is deeply troubling and he needs to answer for his conduct. Joining me now is House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. Mr. Chairman, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
You bet, Maria.
So you sent a subpoena to Jack Smith.
Yeah.
What are you expecting?
Well, we'll see. We know one thing. We've already referred one of his deputies, Thomas Wyndham, we referred him to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution because he tried to obstruct our investigation. He wouldn't answer questions, and we had him under deposition rules under oath in front of the committee. So we want to know Jack Smith, and never forget Jack Smith's history. mean, Jack Smith was the guy who was supportive of what Lois Lerner did years ago when she targeted conservative groups around the country. Jack Smith's the guy who put the gag order on President Trump, went and got that. Jack Smith's the guy who mishandled the classified documents he accused President Trump of mishandling. And Jack Smith's deputies, Mr. Bratt, tried to bribe one of the counsels for a defendant when he said to that lawyer, he said, "Oh, we didn't know you were a Trump guy. We thought you were interested in this judge position." And you can't do those kind of things. So we want to bring in Jack Smith, ask him all kinds of questions, and not the least of which is this whole idea that he was going after what appears to be almost half the stinking Republicans in Congress getting their phone logs, and a bunch of other Americans. So those are all the issues we want to talk about. And having him in for a deposition in no way precludes him from coming in later in an open hearing. We just want him in a deposition format first, where you get an hour to ask questions, and then the other side gets an hour. Then you can come back for another hour, not just 5 minutes like members get in an open hearing.
Well, that's right. And that was the point that I wanted to make as well. I mean, you know, people say, oh, why do you want it private versus public? Because public, each lawmaker just gets 5 minutes. And, you know, they can run out the clock real quick and not say anything. So the private interview is really important as well. But I want to get your take also on the judges here. I mean, Judge James Boasberg, I spoke with Texas Senator Ted Cruz about all of this. And, you know, he was one of those people tracked. Watch this.
And I believe that the House of Representatives should impeach Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg was the one who made findings that he had no basis for. And when he did that, he took off his judicial robe. He just became a partisan crusader. He joined with Jack Smith in the mission to try to stop Donald Trump from being reelected. Thankfully, the voters prevailed, democracy prevailed, but I'll tell you what, if God forbid Kamala Harris had become president, we would never, ever, ever find out about this. They would have buried their abuse of power, and what's critical, this can never happen again.
This is unbelievable, Senator. He was also the same judge that gave a smack on the wrist to the FBI agent who lied about Carter Page to try and say that Carter Page was not working with the CIA when in fact he was, so that they could spy on him during the Russia collusion story. He was also the judge that tried to stop President Trump's agenda. So, Congressman, what about that? Should James Boasberg be impeached?
A couple things. One, this idea that he didn't know. I think that's on him. Maybe you should ask who's this phone number belong to? And if it belongs to someone in a separate and equal branch of government, i.e. a member of Congress or a United States senator, maybe you should know that before you tell the carrier, before you tell Verizon and AT&T. They can't tell that individual that the Justice Department just went and got their phone records. They got mine for 2.5 years. They know who I talked to, who called me, when I talked to them, and how long the call lasted. And if I initiated the call, they knew where I was at when I did so. And they can track that and pattern your life. That is scary. That is creepy. And Jack Smith had that information for me for 2.5 years, for Speaker McCarthy for 2 months. That's crazy. So if the judge signed off on that, he should probably know whose number that individual that number belongs to. If he didn't know that, I think that's on him. Second, you typically don't impeach judges for bad decisions. You have the appellate process. But in this situation, how do you appeal? Because you don't even know. You don't know that the judges put a gag order and the Justice Department has your private information. You don't even know that. So how do you appeal? So we have one of our members on our committee has filed an impeachment resolution for Mr. Boasberg. We'll take a look at all that. We're not saying we're going to go there, but I think we work through this investigation and we see how it all unfolds. And try to make sure this kind of stuff never happens again.
Well, how is Jack Smith going to explain himself here?
I don't know. We'll find out when we ask him questions.
Here's what nobody's telling you about the new bearskin hoodie. This fleece is thick. It's made from 340 GSM of bearskin fleece, which is super warm, wind blocking, and regulates body heat like a beast. You need the new 340 GSM.
I don't know. We'll find out when we ask him questions. We got a number. I typically don't like to say on TV what kind of questions we're going to start with, how we're going to move through that.
Yeah.
What I know is our counsel, we have good counsel as part of our committee. They will conduct this deposition. I'll be there. Probably other members will be there as well. And we'll work through this like we do all others. But now we've also passed legislation through our committee on this non-disclosure, these gag orders.
Yeah.
Limited for all Americans, not just for members of Congress. We've said this should apply to all Americans. You can't do these for years at a time like they were doing.
Right,
This should be
exactly.
for a very
This is a window in the overreach of the national security state. And this was the worry that I had post 9/11 with the Patriot Act. You get a national security state running rogue, and they're going to just continue to erode your constitutional freedoms with just this oversight on your life. And you don't even know. Look at the people that are being debanked. They don't know what the reason is. The government just tells the bank, close the account. They don't know why. They can't tell why. What happens when we start issuing some sort of social scoring? It's a means of control of the society. This is unacceptable to allow to happen. And this is an element of what I call the Bio-Patriot Act, post the event in 2020, where they continue to bring on laws that erode your constitutional freedoms and only strengthen the national security state. And this is why I'm very worried of the potentiality of another 9/11 type event. Because if that happens, then the national security state, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, they're all going to go up to Congress saying, we need more money, we need more people, we need more emergency powers. And I'm willing to bet that if something like 9/11 took place under Trump's watch, Trump will cave in. And there'll be a ballooning out of the national security state again. And what will happen is there'll be Arctic frost on steroids.
Amount of time and for very limited circumstances, if at all. And so that's the kind of legislation we've already passed out of our committee. I hope we pass it out of the House, gets to the Senate, and we actually make it law.
Yeah, and I was interested in this debate around this because New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik did secure the inclusion of a key provision that she wanted attached to the Pentagon's annual policy bill, the NDAA. This requires the FBI to notify Congress when it opens counterintelligence investigations into federal candidates, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, it's a good piece of legislation or good amendment on that bill. We support that 110%. I hope it stays on the NDAA. In light of what we've seen in the last 10 years, particularly what the weaponized Justice Department did to President Trump, this is definitely needed. I totally support what Elise is trying to get done.
Well, I mean, look, and I'm glad you mentioned it's been 10 years, because it has been 10 years that we have been following this and watching all of these political dirty tricks. And that's being kind about what has taken place there in the last 10 years.
But Congress can find time to go after Pete Hegseth, but never have time to really deeply investigate Arctic frost and the overreach of the national security state and the lying of the CIA directors to Congress. Or what about the lawfare that was taking place for many years against the Trump administration? No time at all. They have time to protect narco-terrorists and illegal aliens, but not to protect your constitutional freedoms.
New York Fed, I think there's a little bit of denial still. There's a hope. But again, I think with the move we saw in Besant, now dual titled.
Let me continue with let me continue with Jim Jordan.
I've spoken with Mike Davis a number of times on this, and he is adamant that we will see accountability. But you can understand viewers who may say, well, I just don't believe it, because we still haven't seen anybody take the fall for any of this. Here's Mike Davis with me last week. Watch this.
Anyone who politicizes and weaponizes intel agencies and law enforcement to go after their political enemies for non-crimes has committed a very serious crime. Conspiracy against rights under 18 USC Section 241, and this goes all the way to the top of the Obama administration. President Obama.
So which was more important? Keeping our constitutional freedoms and making sure the national security state isn't doing an overreach in surveilling you unconstitutionally, or protecting the narco-terrorists. Because Congress can't chew gum and walk at the same time.
President Biden, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Jack Smith, Jay Bratt, Andrew Weissman. There are so many dirty actors in this this ongoing criminal conspiracy against rights. These people must be held accountable. I know that the new Miami U.S. Attorney has opened up a grand jury in Fort Pierce, Florida, that's going to be impaneled in January. And I would tell these lawfare Democrats they better lawyer up.
Do you really believe that Obama is going to get indicted?
Presidents have presidential immunity for their official acts. At a minimum, he could be named as an unindicted co-conspirator.
What do you think about that, Congressman?
Well, I'll tell you what we've done. We've already referred to the individuals that were on that list that Mr. Davis gave. And we don't do this very often. The facts have to be there. But we sent John Brennan a criminal referral to the Justice Department for John Brennan. We believe strongly that he lied to us when he was under oath in a deposition format. When it came to the whole Crossfire Hurricane and the dossier and how that was used in the intelligence community assessment. We also just sent, as I said earlier, Thomas Wyndham, one of the chief deputies for Jack Smith, we sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department for him because he was obstructing our investigation when we brought him in, first for a transcribed interview, then for a deposition. So we referred him. We do that when it is warranted. In these situations, it was definitely warranted, and that's why we took that action. So we're doing everything we can from the legislative branch, whether it's the NDO, the Fairness Act that we passed that I talked about on these gag orders, whether it's referring people to the Justice Department as for doing criminal referrals. We will take every action we can, including our overall oversight responsibilities that we have under the Constitution. But we can't indict anyone. Right. Only the executive branch, only the Justice Department, as you know, they're the ones who can do it. And if we think it's warranted, we will do referrals like we've done.
Well, I mean, what about the fact that a judge dismissed the cases on Jim Comey? I mean, do you think that the DOJ should come back with new charges on conspiracy? You were there. You lived it for this last 10 years.
Yeah, if it's there, they should. I leave that up again to the good people at the Justice Department. Attorney General Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Blanche are doing a good job. I leave that up to them. If the facts are there, they definitely should, because we've got to stop this idea that you can go after your political opponents like the Garland Biden Justice Department did.
Yeah. All right, let me switch gears real quick before you go. A key vote on the Obamacare tax credit set for next week. What do you want to say about these subsidies? I know Mike Johnson did not want to bring this to the floor, but we got this bombshell report now from the Government Accountability Office, which uncovered widespread fraud surrounding the advanced premium tax credit subsidies. The exchanges, the federal exchanges reportedly approved fake beneficiaries. They paid them premium subsidies. In 2023, 58,000 so-called dead people were still receiving payments, up to $21 billion going to overpayments or ineligible enrollees. 29,000.
That's the Democratic Party for you, fleecing the taxpayer. Right there. Right there. If you're a Democrat and you're voting for this shit, you deserve to be hung from a tree.
Well, the same Social Security number used in multiple subsidized plans, Mr. Chairman. I know you're one of the lawmakers who formally requested this investigation.
One Social Security number was used 125 times in one year for all these different plans. It's crazy. They created fictitious people, and they all got accepted. That's how bad it is. One thing I know for certain is subsidies don't bring down price. Subsidies typically increase price. What brings down price and what will bring down the cost of premiums is choice and competition. That's the kind of bill we need. Health savings accounts, association health plans, allowing the kind of plans that families want.
But what does the Democratic Party want? One party, one provider system. They want to control it. They want to centralize it. Everything about the Democratic Party just sucks. Just sucks.
Families want a different kind of plan than older families want. So those kind of choices are what we need in our package. I think that's what's coming. This idea that we're just going to extend the expanded Obamacare subsidies to the insurance companies where we just discovered all the fraud that exists, That makes no sense. And never forget 3 things they told us about Obamacare. Like your plan, you can keep your plan. Like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, and premiums will go down. They were 0 for 3.
Yeah.
0 for 3. They got it all wrong, and now we're supposed to keep subsidizing that.
And you wonder why socialism doesn't work. You wonder why Marxism doesn't work. You wonder why the Democratic Party fails. All right. And fails. All right, we're going to go to Bloomberg talking about Hassett's potentiality of becoming the Fed chair. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help to build muscle and to maintain muscle. Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. This is really important. If you're an athlete, younger or older, but especially if you are 40 years of age or older and you're starting to lose muscle mass, you need to take Myotrol. Now, the reason why you're losing muscle mass is you're losing energy, you're not being as active, you're not in the gym doing the resistance training, and when you get older, your genes start to methylate. When genes are methylated, they don't express as well, or sometimes they're shut down completely. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. So do resistance training, take the Myotrol, make sure you do back exercises, build muscle in your back to help your posture, to improve your venous flow back to your heart, improve your lymphatic flow. That will help with your immune system. And also, it will improve the density of your vertebrae. When you do that, your posture is going to be improved. You're going to have all these positive effects with vascular system and lymphatic system. An underappreciated area for muscle building is the back area. So please go to my store, do some resistance training, focus also on your back, and take the Myotrol. Again, Myotrol helps with athletes too to gain strength for their sport. Digestive enzyme complex reduces the load on your pancreas. It helps to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. It helps with digestion. It also has bromelain in it to help to reduce overclotting. And the proteolytic enzymes in here will help to break up glycoproteins, which is super important, especially in the fall and winter season. This is the reason why I said, take the digestive enzyme complex during the crisis of 2020. Please go to my store and get the Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. It allows you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep a night. That allows you to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. When you have a good, regular sleep, you slow down the aging process and improve your neural health. Please go to my store, take the Goodnight Formula to help with your neural health. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg.
Talked to a few people in the New York Fed. I think there's a little bit of denial still. There's a hope. But again, I think with the move we saw in Bessent, now dual titled, it's all but locked. So there is a worry that the credibility of the institution, which affects every employee there, and they all take very seriously, especially the lifetimers who've been there a multi-decade and been there since the financial crisis, where a lot of people really earned some chops when I was there, are worried that, this will affect the ability to actually transmit monetary policy effectively.
So how does that happen? So if we get a new Fed chairman, how does that impact like the New York Fed and other banks around the country?
So again, as you've all covered and we all know, it is a committee, so there is some guardrails. We obviously know the regional presidents are supposed to be isolated and see their own regions and their own interests there. But overall, it is a team effort, and obviously New York Fed is the conduit which faces the market and where the market operations are. So they have to do as the board beckons in a lot of ways, and there isn't any kind of independence in that sense.
So what do we expect from, I guess, next Wednesday, when the Fed does, what are you looking for? What do you think most Fed watchers will?
I think Powell's going to make the case. I think, funny enough, the pain trade is more of a dovish outcome than expected. Everyone right now is looking for that hawkish cut. And then clearly a transition period into next year when we get new leadership. And right now, funny enough, it looks like Powell still may stay on. So the amount of seats that Trump will effectively be able to change may only be one. Lisa Cook looks pretty secure. She's obviously undergoing this legal battle. We're not clear where that's going to end up. But Myron is already a dovish vote. He's going to be replaced with another dovish vote. Will have to get somewhere in June in front of that meeting and make his case for a more aggressive path.
But I need some theater here. Can the governors and presidents with two separate mandates, two separate qualities or feelings in their chair around that table, can they, simplistically, can they rebel against any given Trump chairman?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is an interesting point that's being brought up recently. And I think we saw this from Darius Burkhan, I think he's at T.S. Lombard, making the case that Powell's been encouraging dissent to prepare the committee for this move. So we've never seen quite this rabble.
Let's be careful. That's an opinion.
That is an opinion. That is also something I'm echoing in my opinion. So let's be clear. You're right.
But it's not reporting per se.
No. But it's an idea that's circulating traders and PMs that I've heard now. And it's effectively saying that Powell sees this political fight coming, this sort of independence worry growing, and he's encouraging governors and individual Fed presidents from the regional banks to take up their own opinions and have more debate and to push back on the leadership so that it's not all just what the chairman says.
When Fed Chair Jay Powell does step down, typically when chairs step down, they leave the Fed, historically. You think he may stay?
He loves the institution. He's really committed to the not only goal of the dual mandates and effectively finding the right policy path that gives the right balance to the economy, but I think he has a deep pride in the institution and he wants it to be in safe hands. And I guess maybe in some rebellious way would probably stay on. I don't know. That's also an opinion, to be clear.
Right. So, but I mean, that would be a challenge for the new Fed chair to have prior, and that doesn't happen typically.
It would be interesting because everyone's talking about the shadow chair, and it would be the opposite of that post-June.
I mean, Ruth Carson writes up Greg Peters is wonderful over at PGIM, saying market doubts hasten quickly here. We've got to get you back, Michael. But quickly here, in Japan, farther out the curve, the bond vigilantes have spoken. Is there a possibility in America, farther out the curve, we will see the forward or futures market guess lower prices, higher yields?
Yeah, I think a term premium is coming. I think there's a number of ways to look at that. I think obviously your Fed independence, which we've covered well here, is a concern, but also there's a ton of supply. Corporate supply, treasury supply, this AI supply that keeps growing every day. It's going to crowd out. We have other supply elsewhere. We're seeing this already in Japan affecting global rates coming across the globe on a daily basis. So here we go. I mean, it just seems like it's unless we have a recession, unless we have a real downturn, it's hard to make that safe haven bid with this term premium need.
Looks like it's slow season.
Gotta keep up with SoFi. You can earn more money on your money with SoFi Bank's highest savings APY.
Mind blown. Bank with SoFi to get up to 4.30% APY and an epic welcome bonus.
Alrighty, let's see what else is going on here. All right, this is MS Now about Admiral who orders second boat strike briefs lawmakers. So let's just listen in here.
Now to Capitol Hill, where a sensitive high-stakes briefing is happening this morning. The admiral who ordered a second strike on an alleged drug boat in September after two people survived the first attack is now walking key lawmakers through that controversial decision. And you see him arriving there, that's Admiral Bradley. As that plays out, at any minute, we could also get the Pentagon watchdog report on another controversy from Pete Hegseth's tenure as Secretary of Defense regarding him accidentally texting sensitive attack plans to a journalist earlier this year. MS Now White House reporter Laura Lopez is joining us, along with our congressional reporter Michael Schnell, who's staking out that meeting there on the Hill. And also with us, retired Air Force Major General Stephen Lepper, former Deputy Legal Counsel to the Joint Chiefs Chair. Michael, how are we expecting this to play out today? How long could they be in there?
Yeah, Anna, it could be a long day today for Admiral Frank Bradley and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dan Kane. Those are the two officials who are briefing these top Republicans and Democrats on that September 2nd strike. Now, those two officials, Admiral Bradley and Chairman Kane, they just left a meeting with Congressman Jim Himes. He is the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. He is somebody who wanted to learn more information about what took place during those strikes. And we actually just heard, our colleague and our team heard from Congressman Himes, and I want to read to you some of what he said, what he heard in that briefing. And this is a direct quote. He said that he has respect for Admiral Bradley. He knows he has a storied career. He noted that Admiral Bradley walked him through and defended his conduct with those strikes. But Himes added, quote, "What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service." Congressman Himes continued saying, quote, "You have two individuals in clear distress without any means of locomotion with a destroyed vessel who were killed by the United States." Again, that is from Congressman Jim Himes. He's the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. He just met within the last few minutes with Admiral Bradley and Chairman Kane. So a very direct interpretation of what he heard in that room right now. As we speak, Chairman Kane and Admiral Bradley are right now meeting with some other top officials up here on Capitol Hill, including Senator Roger Wicker. He's the top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee. He is the chairman of that panel. And later this afternoon, he's going to also be meeting with other intelligence officials, including Senator Mark Warner, who is the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. So again, a lot of meetings today to walk through these lawmakers, what exactly happened during that September strike, because as we've been talking about for days now, there are some real fierce concerns about that conduct.
Laura, it's one thing to hear the details coming from these military leaders. It's another to see exactly what happened. And just ahead of these meetings, President Trump did say he would be willing to release the full video of the attack. When could that happen? What else is the White House saying?
Well, we don't really have answers yet on when that could happen, but you're right. The president yesterday was asked, why not release this full video? And here's what he had to say about that.
I'm pretty sure that this Laura was on PBS. They must have let her go, and then she went to MS Now. I remember her being on PBS.
You released video.
All right, team, listen up. There's a national blood shortage. Big Ten schools, how do we get students, fans, alumni to donate? Hit me.
You released video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we certainly release, no problem.
So the president there saying, no problem, he's okay with releasing this. I asked the White House this morning if this full video that shows the second strike and any audio that they have was going to be released, and what kind of time frame there would be for that, and they didn't answer on that. But this is definitely something that lawmakers really want. Not just Democrats, but also Republicans have expressed a request of the administration to release as much information as they have, at least to them, about this strike and the double tap on it.
General, the Wall Street Journal reports that Admiral Bradley is planning to tell lawmakers today the two survivors of that initial strike were seen still aboard the damaged vessel alongside packages of illegal narcotics, and that Bradley and his legal advisor concluded the two survivors were attempting to continue their drug run, making them and the already damaged vessel legitimate targets for another attack. That's according to two defense officials. And the New York Times is also reporting this morning one of those survivors reportedly radioed for help. General, do these new details change the legal calculus? Was a second strike justified?
Well, facts matter, and that's why we were pleased that the Congress was going to investigate this. But assuming that this is a lawful armed conflict in the first place, which is something that most legal experts dispute, having a radio doesn't in and of itself deprive shipwrecked persons of their protection from attack. Even if a radio could summon friendly forces, which I understand has been alleged here, they're still shipwrecked unless they engage in a hostile act. We need to be really careful about arguments like this because they have the potential implications for U.S. forces. For example, downed U.S. airmen are equipped with survival kits that include life rafts and radios. Those radios are expressly intended to call for rescue by friendly forces. International law also considers downed airmen shipwrecked and deserving of protection and rescue. Under those circumstances, would we agree that having radios makes them lawful targets? I don't think so.
Well, the other thing that strikes me here, General, is that if this is what happened, why hasn't the administration said that from the beginning? Why does the story keep changing?
Well, that's a good question, and that's why I and my colleagues, since the Washington Post first broke the story, have called for Congress to investigate this case. The facts are coming out slowly, and we all need to recognize that facts matter, and there's a lot of discretion that the commander on the scene of an operation like this has. Once we understand all the facts, we'll have a better understanding of how the commander in this particular case, Admiral Bradley, used those facts to exercise his own judgment.
Michael had told us about what we heard from Congressman Hines, and now we have that sound. I want to play it for our viewers to hear.
Yes, they were carrying drugs. They were not in the position to continue their mission in any way. We don't, people will someday see this video and they will see that that video shows if you don't have
Democrat from Connecticut. Just keep that in mind, because nothing that Trump does in his administration is right, according to the Democrats.
Context, an attack on shipwrecked sailors. That's what. The last thing I'm going to say is that the Admiral confirmed that there had not been a kill them all order, and that there was not an order to grant no quarter.
John?
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half. They thought I got scammed. But when I showed them my super low energy bill, they were blown away.
General, what stands out there?
Well, what stands out there is that there are apparently a lot more facts here than either the Washington Post or any other media outlet has reported up to now. And, again, what the Secretary described at the cabinet meeting about a boat being on fire, and what has subsequently been reported as two survivors climbing back into the boat, all still lead me to the conclusion that these were survivors who were likely wounded, who may have been in a boat that continued to be able to float, but could not take them to shore. Under all these circumstances, when you add all these facts up, the conclusion under the law is that they were shipwrecked. And unless there was some kind of hostile act, or the capability of engaging in a hostile act that would render the protections that the law accords them moot, then our obligation when we hit them with the first strike was to rescue them, not continue to target them.
Let's turn to another Hegseth controversy that has been dubbed Signalgate. The DoD watchdog report could be at any minute now. And Laura, I know you have reporting that gives us a little bit of a preview of the findings laid out for us.
Yeah, that's right. Along with Michael Schnell and I and others on the team, we have this reporting, but specifically a number of sources who read the report told me that Hegseth's actions by sending this information about an imminent Yemen strike through Signal, that text messaging app, put troops at risk, and was also told by a source that he was the sensitive, who spoke to me anonymously, Anna, because of the sensitive nature of the report. The source said that the report concluded that Hegseth shared classified information, although he does have the ability to declassify that. He failed to preserve records and put military operations and service members at risk when he sent this information. Now, two sources who also read the report told me that Hegseth did not turn over his phone when to the Inspector General throughout this investigation, was not very cooperative, and only provided a statement, did not sit for an interview with the Inspector General. Anna.
So, General, as we await the public release of this report, what we know of the findings are damning. Hegseth shared classified information. He put service members in harm's way. He didn't preserve information. What does that tell you about his judgment, his decision making? Can military personnel trust the Secretary of Defense?
Well, this all comes down to the question whether what he put on that signal chat put lives at risk. Jets were in the air, they were on their way to the target, and a signal chat appears indicating that they are in the air on their way to the target. Under normal circumstances, information like that would place the pilots of those jets at risk. It would place the mission at risk. And so when you combine that situation with the one that we've been talking about over the last several days, with regard to the boat strikes, it indicates that we are on a road that didn't start with the boat strikes, didn't start with the signal chat, but started at a point where back in February, the Secretary made it very, very clear that the law and lawyers have no place at or near military operations. And that road has taken us now to these milestones that indicate that the guardrails that used to exist around military operations, the guardrails of the law and the guardrails of honorable conduct of military operations, have been damaged or destroyed.
General Stephen Leppert, thank you for your insight and analysis. So helpful. Laura Barone Lopez, Michael Schnell, ladies, I always appreciate your reporting. Thanks.
Like what General Jack Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. All right. We're going to go to Fukuyama. He stated on France 24, Trump is the most disappointing thing that's happened in decades. Really? I mean, come on, Fukuyama. I mean, come on. But before we do that, please go to my store and get the Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley will help detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, and help you to build muscle. Do some resistance training. Take the Gladiator Barley. You'll recover quicker after your workout. This is great to improve your musculature when you get older. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from taking Gladiator Barley because it's going to help with the strength for your sport. You can stack this with Myotrol to get added benefit. And by bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals, and detoxifying your body, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, and your vascular system, brain function. Super important. This is a month supply. It's very high quality. Take it every day. Highly recommend it. And olive leaf extract brings down inflammation and helps your lipid profile to help with your cardiovascular health. This is dual purpose. It's going to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And if you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking vitamin B complex. Why? Because the first 4 B vitamins helps the electron transport chain, so it produces ATP. That means you have healthier mitochondria. That means that you will have more energy. You'll have better cellular metabolism. Your tissues will perform better. Your organ systems will perform better. And vitamin B complex will help to protect your neurons. Super important when you get older. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. A lot of people don't realize that there are like 3 or 4 different milestones that are taking place in brain function. There's a new research study that came out about this. But it's really important to realize that around age 30, your neural connections start to dwindle, all right? From fetal development all the way to about age 25 or so, you have a lot of neural connections being built up, and you're learning and you're honing in on certain capabilities for cognitive skills, spatial, visual, math processing, managerial execution, whatever. all right? But once you hit around age 30, you don't feel it. It's asymptomatic, but you start to decline in cognitive function slowly for most people, right? Now it can be plus or minus a few years, depending on how you age, all right? But on average, it's around at age 30. It's asymptomatic. Now you still have neuroplasticity, but you don't have that surge of activity cognitively as when you were in that first epoch of your life, from fetal tissue to age 30. Then there's another point where it is symptomatic, and that's around age 50.
I found some web results. I can show them if you ask again from your iPhone.
I didn't even ask Siri to talk. So at age 50, you start to see or notice some cognitive decline. Maybe memory isn't as good, spatial recognition maybe isn't as good, whatever, all right? It just starts, assuming that you're healthy. And then you have another point in time around 65 to around 72, where you have further decline in cognitive function, where it's a little bit more rapid. So it's an early, late aging. So you have normal development, a little bit of a cognitive decline at age 50. You have this early, late age cognitive decline at around 65, 70, somewhere in there. And then later, late stage decline, late 70s, early 80s, typically, all right? So if you are protecting your neural health, the younger you are, the better off you will be when you go through these milestones. So it's important to do neural protection in your 30s. So when you get to age 50, you're better off. It's important to protect your neurons during that phase between age 50 to 65 or 70, so you lessen the decline of the early age cognitive decline, and so on with late stage. The earlier the better to protect your neurons and bring down that inflammation. This is the reason why I keep on saying, keep that inflammation down, soak up those free radicals, be cognizant of neural health, super important. Because once those neurons die, you can't get them back. It's done. It's done.
Hello and welcome to Tête-à-Tête here on France 24. Our guest is Francis Fukuyama. He's a senior fellow at Stanford University, author most famously in 1992 of The End of History and the Last Man, in which...
So let me get this straight. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, he comes out with a book saying it's the end of history, and okay, well, we had a lot that happened after. See, he was 100% wrong. So we're going to assume that he's right here. He was so wrong right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Why would Fukuyama be so right now? Let's listen in. I haven't seen this video, but I have a tendency to have a gut feeling on things, and I suspect that I will disagree. But I will put on an intellectual hat. It's a rare occasion, but I'll put on an intellectual hat and listen to Fukuyama to see if he's correct or not. But if he was so wrong with his famous book, how could he be so right now?
The end of the Cold War had established the dominance of liberal democracies. He joins us from Palo Alto in California. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Fukuyama.
Thank you very much for having me.
China isn't a liberal democracy. Russia's not a liberal democracy.
What the hell is this guy talking about? Oh, he was wrong.
Well, some 30 years later, it seems that what you asserted back in the early 90s is not true anymore. Democracy, liberal democracy, is being challenged sometime from within. What did you get?
It wasn't true the moment it went to press to print the book. But he must be right now. Let's see. Let's dive in.
Well, I think that the overall thesis was about the direction of development, modernization of history. The Marxists for many years have asserted that it would ultimately lead to a communist utopia. And my argument was that it wasn't heading there, it was heading more towards something like liberal democracy tied to a market economy. We've been in a democratic recession really now for about 15, almost 20 years. The democratic surge peaked in about 2008, and we've gone backwards ever since then. And so there's no question that we're in a very different moment of history, but that doesn't mean that in the long run there won't be, an evolution of human institutions.
What it was is that he bought into the bullshit from Kissinger, saying, open up the free markets for China so you can buy cheap goods, and they'll eventually liberalize, they'll be democratic, and everyone will be singing Kumbaya. Has that happened? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it was brought to you by Bush Jr. when he opened up the gates and said, you have high status for trade with the United States. He bought into the BS from Kissinger.
That direction, because we've had setbacks in the 1930s and the 1970s before. So I think the story isn't quite completed.
But how do you explain this?
And then it's not just at the national level. Look at what's happening at the local level. We got Mondani. He's a communist. He's a Marxist. Do you think he's a liberal Democrat? Do you think that he's for liberalization of markets and allowing for capitalism? Absolutely not. Mondani said he hates capitalism. He's a Marxist. It came right out of his mouth. What is Fukuyama? He was totally wrong. He was totally wrong. Why couldn't he have seen that as society starts to bifurcate between the have and the have-nots, that Marxism will start to take hold? Why couldn't he have seen that? Hayek saw it. He wrote a book about it, The Road to Serfdom. Fukuyama, I'm sure, read it. I'm sure he cited it in his books, but didn't learn from it.
Recession, or the fact that it is not seen as a model. How do you explain it? I mean, is it just because there's been an economic crisis, inequalities? What's your explanation for all of this?
I think that
Black Friday and Cyber Week hate to see me coming. But this year I said, you know what? I'm going to shop smarter. I'm going to take advantage of Mint Mobile's new customer.
I think that the explanation is ultimately not economic, because even though we've had inflation and COVID and other disturbances, the situation of most economies in Europe and the United States is actually pretty good. I think the real problem is, in a sense, a frustration with the existing democratic world. It's stable, it's peaceful, it's prosperous. But I think that in the end, people want more. They want to be recognized. They want to have their dignity asserted. The last part of the end of History of the Last Man was the part about the last man, who's the democratic man who emerges at the end of history. And I think a lot of people don't want to simply be that last man. They want something more. And if that means struggling against democracy, that's what they're going to do.
Right. What's maybe the most surprising
I think the concept of end of history and that there's going to be just democracy, that's not how complex systems work. That's not how the human condition works. Maybe in some sort of messianic era, but we're not there yet, and most likely we won't get there in our lifetime. So wait a minute here. So you're always going to have this back and forth between power dynamics, a rising power versus an established power. So you have the international stress. You have economic stress locally and internationally. You're always going to have competition for resources, for customers. There's going to be cultural affinities. China, mainland China wants to have Taiwan, but the Taiwanese culture doesn't want to be subsumed by China. So you have cultural affinity issues. These are all feedback loops that leads to a point where you're always going to have history. This idea that the end of history and there's just going to be liberal democracies. Really? I think Plato's basically said this. If you're going to have a liberal democracy, eventually it'll start to decline and you'll get into tyranny. And then the cycle starts up again. So who do you think is probably more correct? Fukuyama or Plato? I'm putting my chips on Plato.
It's been happening in your own country. Yes, in Eastern Europe, there's been back and forth. But clearly in the US, now we're seeing people elected and challenging the very democracy that got them elected. I'm speaking about Donald Trump, of course.
Yes. Wait. Why not focus on Mondani? If you've been listening to Mondani lately, and he's not even the mayor yet, he seems to be a little dictatorial. And that's exactly what Plato warned about. Democracy, the will of the people, when it's not a representative government, when it's mob rule, when it's not paying attention to your civil liberties, when it's not a constitutional republic, you will lead to tyranny very quickly. So this is to demonize Trump but not look at Mondani? You can't be fucking kidding me. Oh, Fukuyama has an axe to grind. Even though the end of history and the last man standing hasn't been proven out.
I guess that's the most surprising and the most disappointing thing that's happened, really, since I wrote the book. I didn't think that democracy in the United States would be challenged as frontally as it has been by Donald Trump.
So he thinks that a policy that's not America first, not a make America strong policy, was better? A pre-Trump era was better? Really? Our military was starting to weaken. Our economic clustering was weakening. Our educational system is in tatters. Kids can't even read. Can't do mathematics. We got a generation of stupids. This has nothing to do with Trump. This has everything to do with the Democratic Party. What? So he's for liberalization of markets and ship your jobs over to China and strengthen our enemy?
Yeah, that turned out really well. Not having our allies pay for their fair share of NATO? Yeah, that turned out really well, pre-Trump. What about the shock therapy with Jeffrey Sachs in Russia when Russia was doing their transferring between a communistic society and a more open market society? That didn't work out too well. That's all pre-Trump. That's what the intelligentsia gave to the United States. People like Fukuyama. No, but Orange Man must be bad, according to Fukuyama.
A leader with authoritarian instincts. He doesn't like respecting the rule of law. In foreign policy, he is in the process of trying to cut a extremely shameful deal with Russia over Ukraine. He's basically switched sides in a global conflict between authoritarian.
Oh, okay. So if you're part of the national security state that wants a war everywhere at all times, you would have to go against Trump because Trump's trying to prevent the wars. Fukuyama is aligned with the national security state. That's what he just said. He aligns to the national security state. Now, I believe in a strong military. I believe that if you're going to go to war, you have to kill them. All right? But isn't it really strange that the problem in Ukraine happened right after we got out of Afghanistan? Oh, I wonder why that was. It was the lobbying group. It was the military-industrial complex.
And democracy. And, the worst part of it is that the American people elected him a second time, even though in the 2020 election, he clearly tried to stay in office illegally. And that seemed to not matter to American voters.
No, let's not do a real audit of the machines, right, Fukuyama? Because those machines, black box, must be giving you the right answer, especially during the jump diffusion for all the votes to go to Biden at 4 a.m. in the morning. Really, Fukuyama? Seems like you need to go back to statistics class, Professor.
Elected him. So if the world's leading democracy relapses into this kind of authoritarian practice, I think that it's very bad for democracy globally.
What?
Hey, Mario Lopez here. And if you're thinking about getting a consolidation loan to combine your credit card debts or your personal loan debts into one, then there are three.
What is the most shocking for you with Donald Trump? His challenge of a democratic rule of the courts or the conflicts of interest? I mean, his family is openly doing business, cryptocurrency, real estate deals with Saudi Arabia, and so on and so forth. I mean, what is the most striking in your eyes?
Well, it's really hard to choose from that menu because they're all grave violations of democratic practice. I think that, in many ways, he's trying to amend the Constitution unilaterally by denying birthright citizenship. He's declared war on virtually the rest of the world through his tariffs. And I think that in foreign policy, as I said, his siding with Ukraine.
He really represents the New World Order pre-Trump. That's what he represents. Do you think the New World Order under a pre-Trump era was good for you? That it strengthened us for the long term? Or was it a Band-Aid to import deflation and weaken our military? We can't even make the ships that we need to fight the Chinese. Brought to you by policies that Fukuyama promotes.
Oh, he's an intellectual. He doesn't know anything about design. He's an intellectual. He doesn't know anything about actually making the country stronger. He doesn't know anything about innovation. He doesn't know anything about anything. But he can write a book about the end of history and then be totally wrong. But I thought he was an expert. Oh, so smart that you're stupid.
I'm sorry, deciding with Russia over Ukraine, I think is an abandonment of the traditional American role as the leading democratic power in the world that will help other democracies. And
oh, wait. Fukuyama, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and you wrote your book, which was wrong, what did NATO do? NATO had hubris and kept on moving eastward, which wasn't a really smart idea. What was a better idea was to bring Russia into our orbit economically and start to de-escalate the advancement of NATO. No, we didn't do that because we had hubris. Just rerun the tape of 1991 when we went into Iraq and Kuwait, and we won so quickly, and that hubris that we had with our military. That was the beginnings of it. We thought we could do anything. Now, there was a point in time in our history that was very similar. It was during Truman, once he knew about the power of the atom bomb and what power it could unleash. And he had hubris against Russia because he thought that he had a weapon that no one else had. That hubris switched when they realized that Russia, the Soviet Union, ended up testing a bomb successfully. So you had this one point in time with Truman where he thought that he could do whatever he wanted. And then you had this other point in time with George Bush Sr. after Operation Desert Storm. That's the new world order for you. He doesn't bring that up because Orange Man's bad. See? This is what the intelligentsia from Stanford gave you. This is the intelligentsia of the East Coast, the Northeast, and all the different schools. That's what they gave you.
I don't know which of these is worse. As you said, the corruption in his administration is just off the charts in terms of earlier American presidents.
Really? What about Johnson? What about the assassination of JFK? What about the CIA? What about all the negative and nefarious things that they've been doing since inception? But it must be Trump that's the bad guy. See, Fukuyama isn't even being truthful he's a historian. He should be truthful of what really happened over the many decades. Now we're just going to zero in on what's going on with Trump. Don't you think that every single deal that is happening with his family has to go through some sort of State Department check? I'm real sure about that. Why doesn't he bring up Nancy Pelosi and how she can outperform any hedge fund manager on the planet? How could that be? Oh, she has insider information. If you had insider information, you would do as well too. No, we don't want to talk about that, Fukuyama.
Rich, but almost every single cabinet member is also involved in some kind of self-enrichment scheme. And so, that erodes confidence in democratic institutions.
This guy is he's such a liberal retard about this. Really? Everyone in his cabinet? Everyone? What? Just that statement, everything, everyone. He has made this interview so politically biased. He's not acting as a scholar.
Trust, and in the long run, I think it's going to be very toxic for American democracy.
When it comes to foreign policy,
what about the lawfare that happened? What about Arctic frost, Fukuyama? What about the overreach of the national security state, CIA, FBI, NSA, on American citizens and representatives in Congress? Ooh, that had nothing to do with Trump. That had everything to do with Biden's administration. I mean, Barack Obama's administration.
There's a broad focus on America, but he's been talking less now, but at the onset of his second mandate, about Panama, about Greenland, about Canada. He's also struck Iran. He's threatening Venezuela. What do you make of all this?
Well, it's very hard to find an actual principle underlying Trump's foreign policy other than personal self-interest. For example, the United States has been trying to cultivate a good relationship with India as a counterweight to China. We've been doing this for the last 20, 30 years. Donald Trump really threw that away because Prime Minister Modi, Indian Prime Minister Modi, wouldn't support his bid for a Nobel Peace Prize. And so he's basically subordinated American national interests to his personal vanity. And I think that anyone hoping to see a consistent thread in any of his actions is going to have a lot of trouble doing that. He didn't want to bomb Iran at first. He told Netanyahu to hold back. But then when Netanyahu provided him with an opportunity to strike Iran, he took it. And so, it's very hard to predict where that foreign policy is going to lead. It's not isolationist. He's perfectly happy to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries like Brazil. He imposed a tariff on Brazil because they're trying to legally prosecute former.
Let's not forget about Chile and the CIA and the overthrow in the 70s. Fukuyama has nothing to do with Trump.
President Bolsonaro, and this again is completely inconsistent with any form of isolationism, but it is driven by personal, self-interest.
Obviously, you mentioned China. How would you feel today if you're Taiwan?
Well, obviously.
Are you wearing 7 layers and still freezing your man nipples?
You need the new 340 GSM military grade bear.
Well, obviously, ever since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, people have been particularly worried about Taiwan because Russia set the precedent for a superpower or a great power, simply marching an army across an international border. And China, has been promising to reunite with Taiwan for some time. And I think everybody can now see the prospect of that happening. In terms of Donald Trump's policy towards Taiwan,
people need to pay attention. All right, America needs to make sure that President Xi either is overthrown or is killed somehow, some way, because we cannot allow for our hegemonic power to diminish because of China taking Taiwan, because of a land grab from from President Xi. Now, if Fukuyama doesn't say this, if Fukuyama doesn't say that the United States needs to maintain its hegemonic power in the Pacific and make sure that it has freedom of navigation through the 9-dash line, then this guy isn't paying attention to what the fuck is going on.
Know what it is. Biden made it very clear that the United States would support China against a military attack by China. Whether Donald Trump will do that is not clear. He clearly likes Xi Jinping and admires him in many ways. And I could easily see him making a deal with Xi to, have
this
Taiwan
part,
revert to
this
Chinese.
part, I agree with Fukuyama on. I'm concerned about Trump bailing on Taiwan. This is the point that I make with Trump. I voted for Trump. I'm glad that he's president. I don't think he should be a president next term. I don't think there is even any legal precedence of it. But the thing is that Trump has a tendency not to get the job done because he's afraid. Chickens out. Chickens out. He chickened out on the tariffs. He chickened out in killing the Ayatollah. He chickened out in being more forceful against Putin. Then he chickened out being more forceful against Zelensky. He chickened out with the Epstein files. He chickened out with the JFK files. He chickens out on a lot of stuff. And I have a feeling that he's going to chicken out on Taiwan. So I agree with Fukuyama on this. I'm concerned. I'm deeply concerned about this because if China gets Taiwan, your way of life in America has ended.
Goal, and then claiming that he's, avoided World War III. I think that would be entirely possible, but honestly, we don't know what he would do. I think he's very unlikely to take military action that would involve the United States in direct conflict with China.
As a conclusion, Mr. Fukuyama, do you really believe that the arc of history will make it so that a liberal democracy will become likable again? You say sometimes maybe it's not very enticing, but do you think that people will go back to that, or are you concerned that the authoritarian drip?
If this whole they're focusing on Trump. The bigger thing here is if the United States hegemonic power is circumvented, if it declines, there's going to be a riot. Who's going to make that decline? That decline is probably going to be China. If that's the case, then there are going to be more countries that are going to try to have a one-party rule that is aligned closer to controlled state, one-party system that's aligned with Marxism and not the constitutional republic. If the United States stands firm and China loses, then there's more chance of people to take our governance model and copy it. But the thing is that you can't just copy paste. You got to have the right foundation. And many countries don't have the right foundation, either educationally, morally, historically, whatever. Some will try, but they may not have all of the ingredients that allows for it to flourish. And if you don't have enough of the ingredients, you can't bake the cake. So you're going to have in the world peppered constitutional republics, or what he'll consider as a liberal democracy, flourishing in some regions, and in other regions faltering, and then going back and forth into tyranny.
We've been discussing is what is going to have the upper hand in the near future.
Well, there's a couple of things to say. First of all, authoritarian government does not always work out so well. And I think even in the case of China, There are really big problems with its economic model. Obviously, there are big problems with the Russian expansionist authoritarian model. The other thing to say is that the good thing about a democracy is it can self-correct. We had an election a couple of weeks ago in the United States in which the Democrats did extraordinarily well. Donald Trump's popularity has been falling very dramatically because of all of the chaos and inconsistency that he's created. And I think the American people don't like it. Next year, we're going to have a midterm election. And I think we can already see the peak of Trump's power and a slow decline that in the end may undermine this whole authoritarian tendency of his. So, we'll have to see whether our democracy can save itself. And other democracies, obviously can do the same.
Francis Fukuyama, and thank you very much for being our guest here on Tête-à-Tête from Palo Alto in California. And thank you all for watching this show.
All right, we're going to go to Bloomberg here. They're talking about Hassett. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. This will help with your skin, your nails, your hair, your musculature, your joint health, your cartilage, even your bone density. Take it every day. This is a month's supply, very high quality collagen. And if you really want to improve your skin, take the collagen, the C60, the resveratrol, and the vitamin C. Drink filtered water. The filtered water, the vitamin C and the collagen will cross-link and improve your dermal layer. The C60 and the resveratrol will improve your basal layer, so your skin will improve. So please go to my store, get the collagen. Make sure you do some resistance training to get the better bone density and musculature. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg. But before we do, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,851. The VIX is at 16. And I haven't seen any news yet about the Bradley hearing yet.
Rates are too high. They could be cut. I don't think there's anything anomalous in any of these bios that would make you think that they would approach that differently. I think the one thing I would highlight with Kevin Warsh is he, of the three of them, has been the most outspoken about the need to change the way the Federal Reserve operates. He is somebody who is a self-avowed advocate for reform of this central bank. And I think that might be something that makes him somewhat unique in this deliberation, if in fact it is still ongoing by the President of the United States and his advisors, including the Treasury Secretary. How much does the president want to go down that path of pushing forward, trying to enact kind of wholesale changes to the way that the central bank operates? There are plenty of people who think that that needs to happen, and Kevin Warsh should be somebody who, again, has been advocating for that for a very long time.
I'm fascinated hearing you talk about this, because if we can break the fourth wall for a moment, what you're also hearing is the host of the Big Take podcast, who is in a crouch-like position, waiting for this news to break. You could do that program right now, and it brings me to, I'm sorry, but I always like talking shop with you on the air here. How will this work out when that announcement drops, and how quickly will you have a program on the RSS feed?
We want to move quickly. Look, I've been spouting off a bit here about each of these potential nominees' biographies. I think there's a lot that we don't know about each of them. Again, Kevin Hassett's a familiar face to a lot of us. We've seen him on TV a lot over the last few months.
Yeah.
We know his long career. What do we really know about sort of how he thinks about monetary policy, the arc of his career, how his thoughts have evolved when it comes to monetary policy and the economy more broadly? As I mentioned, he worked for Republican candidates and presidents who had very different policy beliefs than this one. My hope is when this decision comes down, my colleagues and I in the Big Take are well positioned to bring listeners an episode that it illuminates some of that. We'll know who the figure is, but let's go back in history. Let's talk to principals who knew that individual, have known that individual for a long time, and can give us some sense, again, of that evolution that's taken, in the case of Kevin Hassett, him from his time at Wharton to ADI, to the Hoover Institution, in and out of the White House, potentially to this job. I think that's what we're hoping to do here, and bring that to listeners.
I love this. People don't know this, but I actually sit next to David Gura's producers down here in Washington. It's like a whole row. He has saint-like status down here. And I'm delighted you could come on.
Glad to be here.
As always, David Gura. Download, subscribe to the Big Take podcast. We'll be ready when that show drops. Bloomberg correspondent. There's another 3 or 4 titles in there for David. It's great to see you. on the radio, as they say. David Burrow. We'll assemble our panel next. Rick Davis, Janae Wartell are with us as we consider Signalgate and the IG report that just dropped. This is Bloomberg.
Alrighty, let's see what's going on with. Now, maybe we'll be able to get something about the hearing.
Honestly, I had almost given up. Alone at 55, and everyone I know has been married for years. Came across Lana Date and figured, why not?
Lisa Blunt, Rochester. Thank you.
We are listening into Democratic senators as they're talking about health care costs, and we are continuing to keep a close eye on this live look. This is from the Institute of Peace there in Washington, D.C., where we are expecting President Trump to be hosting this peace deal signing with the president of Rwanda as well as the president of the DRC. We haven't seen any of the world leaders walking into this room. They will be seated there on stage, and of course we will take that as soon as we get it. In the meantime, though, we are going to step away just for a brief moment. Much more live coverage.
All right, let's listen in. They're on break. Let's listen into this massive donation from the Dell family.
Well, in just 1 hour on Capitol Hill, House Democrats are holding a hearing on what they're calling Trump's unaffordable America.
But this comes as the administration takes new action to lower costs, including a major push to make cars more affordable.
New White House correspondent Aisha Hasmi joins us live with the details. Good morning, Aisha.
Hey, good morning, Kaylee, Bryant, and Lawrence. Look, this is a messaging war over affordability, and the president is really taking the reins here from Republicans over on Capitol Hill in trying to prove that he is the affordability president. He was able to do it on the campaign trail. He's trying to do it now, and yesterday he hosted the executives of General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, as he announced these brand new fuel efficiency standards here. As you know, Trump has already repealed former President Biden's standards, which required automakers to build new cars to average about 50 miles per gallon. The White House is arguing the Biden standard would have raised the average cost of a new car by about $1,000, and the resetting of these standards will save buyers about $109 billion.
People were brainwashed.
My energy bill dropped from $150 to $50 by doing this. My friends laughed at me when I spent $49 on a power saver device that could cut my energy bill in half. They thought I got scammed.
People were brainwashed. This is a green new scam. And people were paying too much for a car that didn't work as well. And now they're going to have a great car that's going to be environmentally friendly, but it's going to cost you a lot less, and it's going to work great. All of the nonsense is being taken out of the cars.
And the auto bosses all think that this is a big win for customers because it matches the current market.
This allows us to invest in affordable vehicles made in the U.S., which we will take the lead on, and will allow us to make vehicles more affordable. So thank you for making this step for all of you.
Because it's the day where we see CAFE regulation reconcile with real customers' demand. We believe in growth,
we're ready to invest even more. I'm here representing the hard-working men and women of Orion Assembly in Michigan. The facility or manufacturing facility there is currently going through a retool so that we can build additional U.S. manufactured pickup trucks and full-size sport utilities for our customers, and we're so excited about that.
Meanwhile, the president also rolled out his Trump accounts program this week with a big $6 billion donation from the Dell family. This is going to help growing families with kids born in the U.S. It's basically like an IRA mixed with a 529 college fund to help give kids something when they turn 18, some money to spend on college or other qualifying programs. Again, a big move, a big push by a president who wants to show the American people that he is trying to make life more affordable for them. Back to you.
Indeed, Aisha Austin, thank you. And we will speak to the Dell CEO who's providing that money for the Trump accounts, Michael Dell, next. You won't want to miss that.
So one of the things that I found so frustrating when we're talking about affordability, and I appreciate the president inviting these CEOs, and that we don't talk about where we started. We just don't talk about it enough. You can't expect all of this to go away, the damage that was done in 9 months. It's just not realistic. One of the things I asked in our interview with Jim Farley, you know, he's not a political guy. I said, ask him straight up, okay? The Inflation Reduction Act was passed in the last presidency. That was supposed to bring inflation down. At least that's what we were told. I asked him, did it happen? And he said, look, all I can tell you is with cars, the price has been going up. This is the first time you're going to see it within the past 5 years. Where the price pretty soon is going to go down. And it's because of what the president is doing through his partnership with him.
So cars right now, a new car average 50,000, much higher than usual. He says his more affordable new cars, around 35,000, are going a lot faster right now. Here's the CEO of Ford.
It's a really important improvement for U.S. customers. What you should know is that this is a victory for affordability and common sense. As the president said, you know, we will be able to offer more affordability on our popular models, and we'll be able to launch new vehicles built in America that are more affordable because of this rule change. Frankly, CAFE was totally out of touch with the market reality. We were forced to sell EVs and other vehicles. We're not going back to gas guzzlers. We have a lot of EVs and a lot of hybrids at Ford. But now customers get a chance to choose what they want, not buy what we force on them. I think you'll see going into the end of this year and early part of next year, prices for cars will come down. We can build basically what America wants, and what America wants is affordable vehicles.
So 52% up.
Throw it as hard as you want. Go on. Watching it zip away feels like it might just keep going, right? Nope, here it comes. This thing's a total game changer.
So 52% of the automobile manufacturers have left this United States, and they want to bring it back, and they think Michigan and South Carolina are really going to benefit.
And you think about everyone benefiting from this. I was just texting with my dad. He got his first Ford truck in 1966. He's a business owner. He bought 200 Fords over his lifetime for his company. So it makes it more affordable for the consumer, for the small business owner. And it keeps onshore our car companies, domestically, jobs. It's a big deal. We do want to get to this, though. Also a big deal. Young Americans say the nation is heading down a dark road and fear their futures are unsustainable. 57% say the country's heading in the wrong direction, up 6% from last year. And Lawrence, I was thinking of you when I read this. 37% felt this way during the Great Recession. That was in 2009. I'm a millennial. I graduated during that time. My peers couldn't find jobs. 37% felt that the future was dim then. Now it's 57%, and we're not in the Great Recession. That's a big number.
I mean, we hear from young people all the time that they feel like they don't have access to the American dream. And by the way, these aren't young people that don't want to work. They went to school, got a college degree, they work really hard, but they can't afford to get a mortgage. They just can't. And that was something that was promised to them. The question is, how do we turn that ship around? The president is talking about doing these special counts so people can have children and they can start ahead and not behind. You talk about the president with agriculture trying to bring some of the prices of goods down so they can say, even at 50-year mortgage, I know some people don't like it, I'm all for options. The problem is you got a lot of people that feel like that the socialism route.
I think the 50-year mortgage is a bad idea. Bad idea. Now, the reason being is that what that will do is actually increase the price of the homes. Now, why? People would say, well, why is that, Dr. Paul Cottrell? Because if you know that your buyer can get a longer term mortgage, then you'll be able to inch the cost of the sale, and the buyer will absorb it because they'll qualify for a longer loan because their monthly payments are going to be less. And eventually it'll take some time. They'll reach to a certain equilibrium that even a 50-year mortgage someone can't qualify for. It's going to raise the price of homes in the short term. $50-year mortgages are a bad
Going to
idea.
be the solution to that. That's why it's important for Republicans, conservatives to offer an alternative, Brian, to that.
No doubt. Just keep in mind, when TikTok is the #1 news service for that generation, and they keep hearing how bad America is every single day, it gets into your mind. Hopefully the facts in your wallet and the interest rates on your credit cards will start coming down and people will start feeling it.
Well, Dell Technologies founder and CEO Michael Dell and his wife Susan announcing a massive $6.25 billion donation to fund Trump accounts for 25 million kids.
This will give millions of dollars and millions of children, middle-class families a stake in American prosperity, a benefit from the rising stock market, and a better shot at the American dream.
We are confident that others will join us because we all understand the incredible impact that a gift like this can have on the lives of young Americans.
We believe that when children have a future that they can see is worth saving for, then that will help build hope and opportunity and prosperity for generations to come.
So this is Michael Dell and his wife's idea to do this, and they've implemented it, already making an impact. Michael, welcome to our couch.
Thanks, Michael.
What prompted this? Well, I know you were looking to do something philanthropic. I understand it, which is admirable. But what made you think this was the right move?
You know, we've had a foundation for 26 years, and it's been focused on children. And we think investing in children is the smartest investment we can make. This is basically directly investing in their futures with these accounts that will grow over time. And we know that when a child has an account like this, even with a modest sum, they're way more likely to graduate from high school and or graduate from college and, get a job, be a productive member of society, start a family, not be incarcerated. All sorts of good things happen.
Be a part of our economy, capitalism.
Exactly. And so the opportunity to give hope and prosperity and a start to tens of millions of kids, that brings us a lot of joy. And the government is doing a great job here by seeding the accounts of newborns with $1,000. And a lot of companies like ours and others will match the government's contribution. I hope all the companies out there will provide that as a benefit to their employees when a baby's born. And what we decided to do was for the kids that are 10 and under that aren't part of the newborn program, which is sort of the 0 to 2-year-olds, there are about 33 million of them that live in zip codes where the median income is less than $150,000. And we're going to give $250 in the Investment America accounts of 25 million of those kids, so about 75% of those kids.
That's incredible.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, Michael, you talk about also, so you've been extremely generous, you and your wife, but you talk about financial literacy as well. Teaching these young people how to manage their money, what to pay their money. It may not be necessary for all of them to go to college. Maybe they start a business with that money.
That's right.
Explain that.
Yeah, so when I was 8 years old, I got a passbook savings account, and I think I had maybe $8 in it, and you'd go there and you'd give them a quarter, and they stamp the little book, and you could see the effect of compound interest. And I learned about that at an early age, and it kind of sparked this interest in me. We now have 30 states where there is a requirement for at least one semester of financial literacy. And there's a real problem in the United States with this. And maybe it's easy to explain in the sense that if you don't have any stake in the financial market and no savings, why would you be interested in it, right? And so that can create a lot of problems as we've seen. So as you get tens of millions of kids now understanding how this actually works, and their parents
and they have money,
friends, exactly, companies, other philanthropists adding to these accounts, the effect of this, we believe, over time, over 10, 20, 30 years, can be tremendous on the overall country. And,
so let's take a look at the program. You expand to $6.25 billion is your contribution. 25 million kids are going to have these accounts created for them. 250 into accounts for children under 10 and born January 1st, 2025, and 150,000, as you just mentioned, there's a criteria there, so make sure people are doing it.
It's actually by the zip code where you live. We don't actually know what the income level is of a given person. It's zip code.
Michael, I'm a young mom and I speak to a lot of young moms at pregnancy care centers, and these moms are often impoverished, they're destitute, they make a heroic choice to keep their babies, and their babies are their nest egg, and they want to invest in them. And when I woke up and heard this news, my mind went to some of those moms who have made the choice to have this little baby. They want a better future for them. And $1,000 is what you started Dell Technologies with. Explain how a young mom who sees this will benefit from $1,000 like you did. That will grow to much more than that over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Compounding is an incredible force, and this is going to be invested in a broad index fund. Think of the S&P 500. And certainly, by the time the child is 18 years old, it will grow to a much more substantial sum. And if there are, even small additions every month or every year into that account, it just multiplies the effect. And that money can be used for continuing education and, anything that's going to benefit that child. It becomes like an IRA account. And most importantly, when a child has an account like this, it improves the mental health of the parent and the child. And the child understands that somebody cares about them, right? And their outlook on life totally changes.
So, Michael, what do you say? I mean, we were just going through some of the polling for Gen Z Americans right now, and they don't feel like the American dream is attainable. They're not lazy. Some of them are working, but they can't get jobs. They don't feel like they can get a house. But what is your advice to these young people that are hard workers, but just don't see the American dream the same way your generation or even our generation once saw it?
Yeah, these are tough challenges. I think I can't say I have all the answers to that, but I think this is a step in the right direction that will help to close some of that wealth gap. And look, I mean, in the age that we're in, where there's new technology, evolving all the time, we got AI, having critical thinking skills and being able to use these tools to make yourself more valuable, more productive. I don't think there's going to be a lack of demand for that. And there are unemployed people in this country, but the unemployment rate, relatively speaking, is not all that high, by historical norms. And you've got to go out there and make your own success.
Yeah.
And no matter at any era, at any time.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to blame. It's easy to blame other people for your problems.
But again, you started in your dorm room. Steve Jobs started in the garage, dropped out of college. Bill Gates dropped out of college. There's Mark Zuckerberg in his dorm room said there is that feeling I can accomplish something. You got to try. You got to get in the game.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you get this gift, instead of giving people toys they're not going to use, say, hey, I'm giving you $100. I'm going to, your aunt, your great aunt, put it into the account, and that'll be the gift.
And it'll be super easy to Venmo, the money into that account for that child to grow over time and be a meaningful part of their future.
Amazing generosity. Thank you, Michael Dell.
Yeah, I hope other people do the same as well. Even those young people, they reinvest after they're successful, just like you, Michael. We appreciate it.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interview.
All right, we're going to go to Bloomberg right here, talking about the boat strike.
confidence in his general staff, or is he creating an environment where it's protect your butt? I mean, there's a lot of legal issues that these people are being exposed to that we're going to have to lawyer up on.
And shave your beard, I guess, while we're at it. Rick Davis, great to have you, and Janae Wortel will be back together. Our panel in our second hour as we welcome our global television audience to the conversation.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost will help with your energy levels, speed up your metabolism, help with your cardiovascular health, your brain function, musculature. It is a very powerful supplement, and it will slow down the aging process. Now, by taking this on a regular basis, you are going to slow down the aging process. Your immune system will improve. Your endocrine system will improve. Your musculature will improve. Your cardiovascular system will improve. Your brain function will improve. You will notice that you have more energy, and it's a steady burn of energy throughout. You'll have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. All right, there's no crashes. You'll notice the benefits of this within 72 hours. You take this over a long period of time, you're going to get those compound effects where you're slowing down the aging process and you're getting healthier. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. You can read the label on my website. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. You can stack it with the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley for added benefits. This will also help to control your blood glucose levels. In addition, this is part of my anti-aging protocol. The foundation of that protocol is the multivitamin and the probiotics. The first pillar, max 35 or cleanse to boost up your immune system. Second pillar, C60 to soak up free radicals. Third pillar, the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And Boomer Boost to rev up your metabolism is the fourth pillar. It's a great way to slow down the aging process and get healthy. It works. Spend the money, invest in your body, apply this holistic approach, proper diet, exercise, proper supplementation, proper sleep, learning new things, and you will notice that you're slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. These are the supplements that I've been mentioning throughout this broadcast. I take every day. Slow down that aging process and you will be healthier. And when you get into your geriatric years, you're going to have more vitality. Please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Make sure you use discount 5. You get $5 off. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, we're going to listen into Bloomberg once they get back from their break.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Matthew.
Fallout Day in Washington. Welcome to the Thursday edition as an Inspector General report into Signalgate is made public and top brass testify on Capitol Hill about the double tap strike against an alleged drug boat coming out of Venezuela. We'll measure the fallout of both with Bloomberg Pentagon reporter Tony Capaccio, who broke the Watchdog report story yesterday. Insights from Evelyn Farkas at the McCain Institute And from our political panel, Rick Davis and Janae Wartell with us for the hour, and it's all after a look at Wall Street. Charlie Pellet back on the case today. He's got the update on the markets live from New York. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Joe Matthew. Choppy session right now. Down lower, S&P, NASDAQ, they are both higher. Just a couple of minutes ago, we had all three pushing higher. S&P, little change, up 6 right now. That is a gain of just about 0.1%. Stocks wavering on the brink of a record ahead of next week's Fed decision. The Dow, lower a little change, down 2 points now. NASDAQ up 34 for the NASDAQ Composite Index, a gain of 0.1%. 10-year at 4.09%, with the 2-year at 3.52%. Spot gold up $14 the ounce, 42.17, up 0.3%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1.4%. WTI 59.77 a barrel. And Bitcoin now down 1.4%, 92,402 on Bitcoin. Goldman Sachs has paused a planned $1.3 billion mortgage bond sale for CyrusOne. That's the data center operator that supports CME Group after a major outage that hit one of the world's largest derivative exchanges. Goldman Sachs shares, they're higher now, little change, but up by about 0.1%. Meta Platform shares, they are advancing 4% as executives consider budget cuts for the Metaverse Group next year, while bets on a Fed rate reduction next week do remain intact. Right now, we got Meta Platforms. It is advancing by 3.9%. Earnings news, Salesforce.com after earnings up by 3.4%. And earnings after Snowflake, it gave an outlook for operating margin that fell short of analyst estimates. Snowflake right now, it is down by 11.1%. Again, recapping, Dow flat on the day, S&P higher by 0.1%, Bitcoin down 1.5%, 92,334. Balance of Power continues now. Back we go to Washington. Once again, here's your host, Joe Mann.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. We'll have more on the markets with Charlie Pellet live from New York in just about 20 minutes time here on Balance of Power as we talk politics here in the nation's capital. Thanks for joining us on the early edition this Thursday on Bloomberg TV and radio, available as well live on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Business News Live. Our conversation ahead with Evelyn Farkas from the McCain Institute as we get our hands on the IG report that Tony Capaccio broke yesterday, our Pentagon reporter, no longer inside the Pentagon, yet somehow making more news than ever. This is the report, the watchdog report into Signalgate, which of course has caused the walls to start closing in a bit around Pete Hegseth. Michael Waltz, the president's former national security advisor, has already been reassigned over this. And what we're learning here is indeed troops may have been put at risk when the defense secretary decided to share on Signal, on the app that we're talking about here, some battle plans that were about to unfold over Yemen. We're joined now by the aforementioned Tony Capaccio, Bloomberg Pentagon national security reporter, who has his hands on the report. This is what, 80-something pages long?
84 pages, yeah.
Now, you saw portions of this yesterday. Are we learning more today?
We didn't see portions of this. We were
someone who
referred, yeah, someone who saw it gave us and other media. So I don't want to overplay that.
Absolutely. But you're looking at these documents now. How much more of a complete picture do we have?
It's somewhat more complete and somewhat more distressing. So it's 84 pages, but not every page is laced with gold. For the viewers here, they want to look at page 25, page 14, basically. Those are the kind of the meat. On page 25, it says the Secretary's communication of non-public DoD information created additional risks to U.S. forces and missions. And the killer quote is in that page. But bottom line is, this showed that the Secretary of War or Defense, whatever you want to call it, was cavalier in his use of this information. This is clearly classified, battle of war, a time on target of F-18s hitting XYZ timeframes. And he sent this stuff out in Signal 2 to 4 hours before the operations began. That was new to me. It's just a very cavalier notion. And then in his very cocky letter to the IG, basically sticking it, thumbing his nose, saying that no classified information was sent. Right. March 25th, he said the same thing. I didn't text war plans to the media. Well, this report shows that he was not telling the truth.
But it also indicated he had the authority to declassify.
Yeah, he had the authority
How
to
do we
declassify.
rationalize these two findings?
The IG thought they were silent on the issue whether he should have declassified or could declassify. But, excuse me, acknowledged that he was a declassifying authority, but they didn't get into that issue. It was more what he did send out potentially could have caused risk for pilots. The Houthis don't have great electronic warfare capabilities to divine into signal gate, but the possibility was there, and it's clearly they put his actions potentially put U.S. airmen at risk.
Well, of course, the reason why we know about this is because a journalist was inadvertently added by Michael Waltz, the former national security advisor. To what extent, then, is Pete Hegseth implicated? Because the chain was already there, right? And there were two different chains. We should be clear about this. One had cabinet officials, the other he had friends and family on.
Yeah, the second one they barely discussed, and it was like a blink of an eye. That just wasn't a highlight of the report.
Was that an existing thread before these battle plans were put forth?
With the first or second?
The one that had the reporter on it, the one that had the Atlantic.
My impression was no, he set that up after he had the info. And in fact, the report makes the case that he actually had access to a secure facility. They call it a skiff.
Yes.
He had access to the facility to send the same material out. But yeah, the point here is that he denied it was classified information. The IG was pretty clear that it was classified information, and that putting it out there created additional risks to U.S. forces and missions. I mean, I'll say
as a point of fact, not could have. Are you
as a
reading
point of
that?
fact, yeah. And let me read. Even though these events did not ultimately occur, the Secretary's actions created a risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives and potential harm to U.S. pilots.
I'm reading directly from the IG report.
Yeah, it's on page 25.
So I'll read directly from the statement from Senator Roger Wicker, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Quote, "It is clear from the reports that the Secretary acted within his authority to communicate the information in question to other cabinet level officials." He then goes on to write, "It's clear our senior leaders need more tools available to them to communicate classified information." So nothing to see here.
That was a gentlemanly bop and weave.
Okay.
You know,
But that would be the man to do something about it.
yeah, his statement effectively, in my eyes, pretty much deflates this whole issue. I mean, but you know,
So Signalgate becomes Deflategate. That was for producer James.
there was also football.
Well,
scandal
that's
called
correct.
Deflate.
I remember that well. That's what I'm saying.
Patriots, or
Yes,
whatever
I
they call it.
unfortunately was there for that.
But the point here is that, you know, while he had the authority to do it, there's a judgment call here. Whether they do it on signaling, it's a judgment issue.
Correct. Whether it is legal, whether it is right, are two different questions.
Right.
Now, let me ask you about the
Question
other
is
brick in the wall here, because, you know, we're talking about a potentially difficult day for Pete Hegseth. You've also got top brass, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the admiral who ordered the double tap strike on the boat coming out of Venezuela, testifying today on Capitol Hill. There are questions today, and we'll talk to Evelyn Farkas about this. At what point do these stories combine to create a weight that the SecDef cannot handle?
You know, I don't think it's,
Politically speaking.
yeah, I don't think the weight is going to be that big based on this report.
How about what's happening on the Hill today?
It depends on whether the Republicans come out and show some outrage. It can't be all Democrats predictably saying the guy should go. And I don't see the wake. And I don't see the wake over the water coming over the ship's side.
Yeah.
I see it maybe pounding against it, but still rocking but not capsizing.
Just a quick note where I started here. You were excised essentially from the Pentagon by not agreeing to sign this.
Exiled means I might have been assassinated.
Exiled, we'll go with fine. Exiled, I think kind of well. Listen, you choose the language you want. Would this have come out yesterday if you guys were all still in the building? I feel like reporters like you are getting more news now having left the Pentagon than you might have been getting inside the Pentagon.
No, this definitely would have come out had we been inside.
Yeah.
It would have been more contentious because we would have gone in their face and said, what about this?
Okay.
What about, and they might have come back.
You don't think you're getting more scoops than you were before this happened?
I think the scoops are, I'm getting about the same. What we're not getting, though, is access in an emergency. Right. If the United States struck Venezuela tonight or tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to run in and get stuff. We could grab, and we'd be dependent on emails and calls in which wouldn't be answered. And then we'd be all depending on Twitter and their babble from other places.
People love it when you come on the program because you're authentic, and I appreciate you bringing this reporting to us, as always. Tony Capaccio, Bloomberg Pentagon reporter, with us in the flesh here in the studio. We're lucky he's in the Bureau more often now. That was the decision across the river. As we add the voice of Evelyn Farkas, With more today on the testimony and the idea of the legality surrounding this second strike on the same boat with survivors in the water. There's been some illuminating reporting by the New York Times into this, conditions that had been set before this scenario by the Secretary of Defense on how to handle survivors and whether in fact they continued to present a threat. President Trump talked about this just yesterday. As a matter of fact, he was in the Oval Office when it came up. Listen to what he said.
We know every route, we know every house, we know where they manufacture this crap, we know where they put it all together, and I think you're going to see it very soon on land also.
So to be clear, you support the decision to kill survivors after the...
No, I support the decision to knock out the boats, and whoever is piloting those boats, most of them are gone, but whoever are piloting those boats, they're guilty of trying to kill people in our country.
Evelyn Farkas is executive director at the McCain Institute at Arizona State University and has been in the building. She's former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, Eurasia. Evelyn, it's great to see you back on Bloomberg TV and radio. I don't want to turn you into a lawyer here, but there are things like the Geneva Convention, international law, and training that troops go through, and certainly top brass go through when you talk about the general staff and dealing with scenarios like this. What are these senators hearing today from the admiral who ordered the strike and from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who both say they acted legally?
Well, Joe, thanks again for having me back on again. And I'm only sorry I can't be on with Tony Capaccio, who was one of my favorite journalists going back decades. So, look, unfortunately, we in the public don't yet know exactly what transpired. I do think eventually we'll see the videos and we'll get the full story. But I think we have to step back 1 minute and understand that these operations in and of themselves are likely illegal. The fact that we are conducting these operations on the high seas, the fact that we're calling them war, it doesn't make it war. These are police actions.
McCain Institute? I'm saying, they can't make this stuff up, man.
That are resulting in the killing of people we don't even know, targets, who we have been told are drug smugglers, working for kind of a drug terrorist organization. So this is all new legal waters, to use a pun intended, that we are being asked to explore. And I would like to hear from lawyers, frankly. I don't want to hear just from the admiral. I want to hear from seasoned, judge advocate generals, people who understand the military law. And certainly when it comes to the issue of people who are survivors, who are not piloting the boats, Joe, who are in the water clinging to them for their lives, those people are survivors and they should be given safe passage. So we know that if those were Americans in a war context or in a police context, that we would expect the same from any other actor who comes across them.
We have a literal split screen unfolding live right now in Washington, Evelyn, as President Trump has begun speaking at the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace, as it was renamed just 24 hours ago. He's there with the presidents of Rwanda and the Congo to talk about their arriving at peace. If you're with us on Bloomberg Radio, the backdrop behind the president has big lettering that reads, "Delivering Peace." So with that in mind, Evelyn, reporting by the New York Times today shows that Pete Hegseth approved contingency plans for this very scenario. The military would in fact attempt to rescue survivors if they appeared to be helpless, shipwrecked, or out of what they considered the fight. But it would try to kill them again if they took what the U.S. deemed to be a hostile action, like communicating with suspected cartel members. After the smoke cleared from the September strike, there were two, as you mentioned, survivors clinging to wreckage. One of them radioed for help. Is radioing for help a hostile act?
No, we know that from our own service members who explain to us that they have survival kits, and the survival kits include radios to call for help. That is not an act of war. That is an act of survival, if you will. That is a civilian act, if nothing else. So those individuals cannot be killed for radioing for help.
It's really interesting because Admiral Bradley and his legal advisor, according to the Times, concluded that they were attempting to continue their drug run. And they're telling senators today that made the already damaged vessel a legitimate target, Evelyn. What do senators say in response?
Yeah, I mean, I would doubt that that will hold up in any kind of court of law. And frankly, I do think that these individuals will be court-martialed at some point or brought before a military court of justice. If not now, then at the end of President Trump's term or some other point in time when Congress can step in more assertively. The reality is we need to make sure that we abide by international law, the United States that is, because we have service members who are working all over the world every day during peace and obviously during war. And we want them to also be given fair treatment and given the protection that the Geneva Conventions gives them.
You believe Admiral Bradley will be court-martialed or others, Evelyn?
No.
Well, I don't know. Obviously,
No.
we'll have to look and see what how the investigation unfolds. But it does appear, I guess I shouldn't go so far forward, lean so far forward to say that he definitely will be. But there must be more investigation. Let's just leave it at that. And then someone might have to be held accountable. But there's also an overriding question, as I mentioned, Joe, about the.
He's not going to get court-martialed, and even if there was an issue, the president is going to pardon him. This is going to be a nothing burger. And narco-terrorists are dead. It's a good thing.
Under international law of these operations. Deeming them war does not make them war.
To begin with, reporting in the Wall Street Journal about a different admiral, Alvin Halsey, who was the head of Southcom, and until now we believe that he had stepped down from his position in some sort of protest over these operations. Evelyn, the Journal is reporting that he was forced out by Pete Hegseth after voicing initial concerns about the legality of these operations. Based on your time in the Pentagon, how unusual is it to see a commander fired from his post or taken off of that post during an ongoing military operation?
Well, it's incredibly rare, Joe. And I will note that when I worked on the Senate Armed Services Committee, I had oversight for the Southern Command as well as the Special Operations Command. So you do not remove your leading commander unless there's real cause. And in this case, the only thing he did was question the legal assessment, it sounds like. I mean, I don't also know the full details on this. And to fire someone for questioning, which really should be the commander's job. I mean, he should be questioning everything to make sure that he's protecting the men and women in uniform who are working and conducting operations under his orders.
As an admiral, can Alvin Halsey speak out about this? Or just in our remaining 30 seconds, Evelyn, will he need to be compelled by Congress to speak publicly?
He likely will. Well, that's a good question. He can speak out as a civilian, certainly. And the only thing that he can't talk about are classified items publicly. But of course, he can speak to the relevant committees in a classified session about all of this.
A lot of it is just speculation. These clowns don't know what really is going on. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. This will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. It'll help with your immune system and endocrine system. Take the turmeric to bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. That will help your immune system, your cardiovascular system. And ashwagandha root controls cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. By doing that, that's going to help with your cardiovascular health and help with your immune system. Stack these together to get the max benefit. The turmeric, the lignans, the ashwagandha, boost up that immune system. And when you do that, you're slowing down the aging process. Super important. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please take my advice. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get healthy. All right? It's in your power. If everybody did this, our healthcare costs would radically go down. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.